Welcome to my video on Hitman 2016. For now, I'm thinking I'll keep it entirely spoiler-free. The game is rated M for mature, so will this video be. And I really fucking loved it. It took me almost a decade to get to play this game, and it was worth the wait. If you want an extremely brief, just a few seconds review, yeah, if you like anything about one of the other Hitman games, this one almost definitely does it better. The one thing I would say is, if you just want a Hitman game where you can also just run around and shoot basically everyone, I'd say Contracts is still the top mark for that. But that's not really what this or, the three that I've played since Contract are not really trying to outdo that one for that. And if you've never played a Hitman game, this is a good place to start if you have any interest in the franchise. I talk about the appeal of the franchise in some videos on the franchise. Yeah, so I'm going to get into more detail. It's a good place in the video to briefly note that I have not yet played the two that came after this, Hitman 2. I wish they had kept up the subtitles because it's confusing that there's two Hitman 2s. But then it's also confusing that one of them's called Hitman Silent Assassin, when Silent Assassin is also a rating you can get in a bunch of these. And one is called Contracts, when Contracts is a feature in 5 and this. Anyway, anytime that I refer to the rest of the franchise, the game franchise, I am talking about this. Yeah, when I talk about the Hitman game franchise, I talk about this game and the ones before it. I am not comparing it to the ones after. I guess this is also a decent time to recommend, if you haven't already watched, I quite enjoyed Carolyn Petit's video review on Feminist Frequency channel of this game from back when it was, that one's actually, she reviewed it before they had released more than one level, because back in the day they released, they put out the first level and the training missions, and then over some months, I think it was, they released the remaining missions. And I also wanted to recommend a more recent video, and since it is Women's History Month, I am trying to recommend videos by female leftists, and this time it is Ophie Doki's Wait, Those Thirst Tweet videos are kind of weird, aren't they? Really excellent. Now, I don't want the following to sound like a diary entry. I'm going to try to keep it 100% relevant. And, I don't know, feel free to skip ahead if you just do not give a fuck. But I feel I should say, I have played all the way through all of the main levels, and I got almost all the challenges. I will explain what that means later in this video. I barely played Contracts. Essentially, I only played Contracts to achieve challenges, which again, later in this video, that sentence will make sense. For now, just understand I could have spent even more time on this, but it's 90.3 hours that I have spent on it. I did not play the bonus missions or Patient Zero, and the reason I chose not to do those, I suppose, is twofold. One of the main ones is that I understand that it does not have XP, there's no unlockables there, and the geography of those levels is very, very similar. Like they essentially, you know, altered. And since I haven't played them, I can't say how much. The main levels then, yeah. And I gotta say that's not really like such a big part of the appeal of playing this to me has been rising through the ranks and examining new levels. And I appreciate that there's from what I understand, at least some difference. But it's still like the skeleton is essentially the same. And I am not saying they made a mistake in making those, because the thing is, like, that's the other one of the other major reasons. While apparently Patient Zero serves as somewhat of a prologue, it's not really crucial from what I understand to appreciate the rest. And I really got into the story of this game, such as it was. That's always been a little bit of a. It's not the strongest suit of any Hitman game that I've played, but yeah. Let's see. Yeah. I guess that does make my point. But yeah, I think it was very smart of them to make these as just additional. So if you've played all the main ones and you're like, I want more, there you go. There's more. But if not, then you're okay. Like I would definitely say, try not to tire out in the main campaign, because the ending you're gonna wanna see here, And I guess, let's see. I feel like there's at least one more thing I really wanted to say there. Yeah, I guess that it does segue nicely into, yeah, one of the reasons why I stopped here and I'm doing this video now is that I was, as someone who has been with this franchise from the start, and there's something I love about all of them, though not quite equally. I would argue there's not a single bad game in the ones I've played. This was a case, and I hate to say it, but I think it might have been the first time, but I did start to feel a little overwhelmed, and I guess I would say most of the levels at some point or another, I would end up feeling like, okay, there's a lot here. And the important thing to note is, that's because I went for so many challenges, and you don't have to. You can play each level once and still get the story and be fine. Like, if you play challenges, if you rise through the ranks, there's 20 levels of mastery to each level. I don't think I'm going to give away exactly how many levels there are for those who don't want to know. It's very easy to find out. You're on the internet if you're watching this video. That's where you'll find it. But basically, over the course of the ranks, you unlock new places to start in a level, which is something that really increases how much freedom you have. Like, freedom is one of the biggest that they have been working towards that from the very start. You can see it right there in the first one. They just lacked the technology to completely accomplish it. And by this one, they had pretty much perfected it. I'm really excited to play the next two, because in some ways I barely even know how they're going to make it even better. And from what I understand, they found a way, but yeah, the basic so that's one of the things from rising through the ranks. And another is that you are, right, I guess I should also say, so technically the story, is that a spoiler? I guess you can look up, there's something about the story. Let's just say, no, yeah. I I was very happy with it, but there is something that could potentially, yeah, I don't think I can go into it without spoiling anything. Anyway, the it's not. I definitely don't think it's a big problem, and this is yeah, one of the best, possibly the best of the stories of the games up to this one. Anyway, yeah, the other thing is that you gain access to tools and weapons, and it's very important to underline you don't need any of these to complete the game and have fun. I tried out the ones I earned, and I read like what are the you know what do you gain from using this thing and such, and there's not a single one that you simply would not be able to complete the game. I appreciate that that can sound weird to say from someone who has had access to them, but there are challenges that are difficult to complete if you don't, rise through the ranks and get some of these tools. And there are contracts that you cannot complete without them. But I have made my point. I'm trying not to belabor it. Yes, so yeah, I guess I'll just very briefly. It's definitely it's stuff that makes it more. It gives you additional options. Like it's not a spoiler to say there's at least one thing that is a weapon that you have to rise some through the ranks to get, and if you get it, you can be frisked and it will not be discovered. That's a pretty major thing to. But at the same time, yeah, there was never a time where I just needed that. One of the things that happens here is that once you've completed the entire thing, if you rise through the ranks at all the levels, then, yeah, some of the last things you're going to get are going to make you, like, that's the thing. If I hadn't slightly started to tire of this, I would probably, I would definitely go back and play, well, not necessarily replay the levels, but I would play the bonus missions, Patient Zero. I would play more contracts because you get a lot of really fun tools. And I actually noticed that one of the last things you get is actually something you usually get much earlier in the other games. And I suppose, I think this is a good time to talk about. So, when I say I got tired, I want to briefly share one thing that I wish I had realized sooner, and I'm really relieved that I did. For the maybe last half of this game, I realized you can complete a lot of challenges without finishing the level, and I don't think, or I guess I realized that, but early on I felt like, is it cheating to not? No, I would argue that it is not, because there are so many. Like, we are talking, there are dozens to, I guess, all the levels, at least a bunch of the levels will have dozens to just the one level. And sure, sometimes you can accomplish multiple in one, but then there's challenges where you can only do that one challenge in one play, because some of the challenges, what's it called? They exclude each other, kind of thing. And yeah, like some of the challenges, you're only gonna get that challenge if you finish the game, if you finish the level. So finish the level for those, and for the other ones, save scum, maybe, just or accomplish it and then restart the level and go for other ones or something. But yeah, that's something I'm definitely going to be doing for 2 and 3, which I do already own. It will be a little while because I'm going to try to, I don't want to burn out on, yeah. I never ever want to burn out on the Hitman franchise. Anyway, right, if you want to know my specific ranking of the Hitman games, there's a link in the description box to a Google Doc that has all of my video game rankings. And you can just word search if you're just looking for a specific one. There's a lot by now total. Anyway, I guess that does, as far as the timing thing go, I definitely want to underline, every time I started a new level, I felt reinvigorated. Running around and doing recon, it just, like, this is what I've wanted out of Hitman for 25 years. I kept thinking they're gonna get there, and there were times that they got close. Like, one of the things going on here is how large levels are, and that was also not quite the same extent, but some of the levels are quite large in contracts. Actually, were they all? You know what? See, that's the thing. I can't even call it Hitman 3 because that's also the new one. The most recent Hitman is technically Hitman 3. So I'm afraid I'm just going to have to call the contracts. I hope it doesn't get too confusing when I... yeah. Oh, right. For the... no, yeah. This video is going to build on my other videos for Hitman. Otherwise, we're going to be here forever. Like, as it is, there's so much new here. It's going to get... I think this video is going to get long. Now, oh, right. I played it on PC. And basically, this is one of the ones that goes for an overarching plot line. And they had, by this point, realized how to make that sort of thing work. Like, they had sometimes struggled with it in some of these games, but, yeah. Sometimes there'd be a little too little of it or detail in it. Sometimes it would be excessive. Oh, right. I guess I meant to say this at the start. I think I will probably be spoiling at least some of the games leading up to this one. That's otherwise that's really going to limit what I can say. But yeah, I mean, I feel like contracts, it's like, yeah, there's a little bit too little plot in that game, too little detail and such. And then with, Absolution, there's perhaps a little bit too much. It's too hyper-focused on this plot line when, part of the appeal is. And that's something this is such an amazing recovery from, this is like, no, I'm not going to make that reference. That's too corny. But it's an amazing recovery from Absolution. And I am very pleased, but not hugely surprised. I knew they had at least one more amazing in them. Oh, I guess, does it... maybe I should just briefly, not barely, explain. So the reason it took me almost a goddamn decade to get to this game is that my wrists were in a really bad state years ago, to the point where I could barely play video games. And then, about a year ago, which gives you an idea of that's how long it took me to put in, was it 80 some hours. About a year ago, I started playing this. I think right after I did my review of Marvel's Avengers, which that one also took me some time to get through. But yeah, I think that does bring us nicely to, yeah, so I already mentioned that this is not the one you want to play if you're just trying to shoot your way through, there's always been a tension in this game franchise between those two things. And I'm willing to admit, as much as I love that first game, it did technically start there, because there are levels in the first one where, and this is not an exaggeration, you basically do have to, yeah, if you don't shoot a bunch of people, like maybe a dozen people in that level, you can't complete that level. That's just, and then in the second one, it's like, oh, you're going to get, a Silent Assassin rating if you only use one bullet, which I appreciate. Like, there's something really cool there. That's like, fuck, am I the goddamn jackal? Damn. Not the Bruce Willis one, the good one. But that's not really meant as a diss of Bruce Willis. Personally, I like a lot of his work and love some of it. So, but yeah, that's a really shitty movie. It's not his fault. It's not Richard Gere's fault. It's not even. Am I remembering right? Wasn't Jack Black in that? Which I'm warming up to Jack Black these days, but back then he could be really annoying, and there's no reason for him or his character to be in that movie. Like, even if you wanted a character to fill the role there, like, have it be someone else. That really felt like, well, if we don't throw the American audience someone who's like this, they're gonna, this young annoying guy, yeah, they're gonna riot. Like, seriously, if you haven't watched the original, it's fucking amazing, and there's definitely some inspiration from that movie. Some of these games take inspiration from that movie. Anyway, one bullet in order to get Silent Assassin, cool idea. You should probably have fixed your fucking recoil first, because that's a real hazard, especially considering like the higher difficulty settings don't allow you to, save scum, which sometimes you kind of need to in order to accomplish the one bullet thing. Anyway, that's another reason why Contracts is so good for just running and gunning. They fixed the fucking recoil. That also makes a huge difference. Like, in most ways, I definitely prefer Kane Lynch 1 to 2, but the second one definitely unfucked the recoil. Anyway, I think that does cover... Yeah, so the tension between whether you are, shooting a lot, or just in general, like, if you're taking out a lot of NPCs, or if you are purely going for targets, and if you're being like loud and noticeable and such, which I wanted to acknowledge. I thought, Caroline Petit also did a great job discussing in her video. But the thing is, by this point, they kind of had to deliver for both. And so essentially what they chose to do is that it is not always impossible, but you definitely don't want to make it the first thing you do, and don't count on it actually working. This is one of the ones, it might be the one where it is the most difficult. The first one can also sometimes be very, very difficult, but you don't actually have a health bar. It's just the screen kind of, let's see, I guess it sort of darkens as you take damage. There's no such thing as healing items, no body armor, and you can be taken out in very little time, and there are a lot of guards who will have submachine guns, assault rifles, stuff like that. And yeah. It is, I saw someone put it in the following way. It's not a shooter, it is a puzzle game. And yeah, that is, I guess there's a good time to talk about. So one of the things is that, in I think the first time where there was, well, let's see. No, yeah, Contracts. When you first play a level in Contracts, the game, you cannot choose what you bring in. It only lets you, it's only on replay that you can, which, technically you can replay in order to get a higher rating, so it is, but, that first time you're going to be limited to what they chose you should start with, and they brought that back for Absolution. In both this and the Blood money. You can choose to put a weapon drop somewhere in the level. And at this point, I forget exactly how it is in Blood Money, but certainly in this one, there's only ever one drop. There's just multiple places. That's also something that's, yeah, in that one, I'm almost 100% certain there's just one spot where they'll put the weapons that you ask for to drop. Here, as you rise to the ranks, you unlock different drops. And between those and the starting positions, yeah, sometimes you can start real close to something you bring into the level. And if you're, if you want to give yourself a challenge, or if you're not super careful, you might end up with, it in the opposite end of the level where you have to get through a bunch of secure areas to get there. This is also definitely one of those the games where you can, if you can make it more challenging for yourself just by, choosing certain, and still be able to do it. There are a bunch of games where if you try to make it more difficult for yourself, it's just, you're going to end up not using the things you need to, and that's, yeah. Anyway, the weapon drops in this. You can only bring one weapon, regardless of its size, and some of the weapon drop locations only allow for a small item. But yeah, it's one weapon or one tool. And the tools are such a clever element here. They've toyed with that, tinkered, you might say, before. This is where I think they absolutely nailed it. Like, again, I don't know about 2 and 3, but no, yeah, I'm gonna briefly go over. So some of the, one of the things is a lockpick, and I forget right now. I feel like at least one of the previous ones had a lockpick, but yeah, this time, yeah, if you want a lockpick, you're not gonna find it in the level. You got to use a weapon drop. You got to use the weapon drop or one of your slots. You have a slot that can only be used by a pistol, but that's also something I quite appreciate. They have a bunch of different ones, and I think all the ones you can bring into the level are silenced, but right now I forget. But there's a bunch of different ones, and there's just enough of a difference. And this is also, I quite appreciate it. It was very easy to find out what the difference between the different weapons is. There's an actual, like, you can go look it up inside the game as you are choosing what weapon you want to bring, but you cannot bring a large weapon on your person into any level. It has to be a weapon drop. The only, yeah, so the pistol, and then there's two other slots, and you can put a melee weapon in there, defaults to the fiber wire, and the other default is 3 coins, which I also think is very, so coins were also in Blood Money. I forget if they were in Absolution. In Blood Money, they gave you infinite, and I think that worked for that game. Here, you start with 3, you can start with 3. Hypothetically, maybe you choose something else, and that is such a smart way, because, like, if you throw a coin and you don't pick it up, that's it. Like, the NPC that finds it is probably going to pick it up. And if you can take them out safely, you can retrieve the coin, but maybe you can't, so very nicely done on that. It is also worth noting you can find other stuff to throw and distract with in all of the levels, but the more you have to go for those, the more you risk being discovered. One other, right, yeah, in addition, so this brings back from Absolution this thing of, if you pick up an item, you can use it to, hit someone with. Now, I forget if that one let you knock people out, because that's also always been very in flux in these. In the first one, you can't really knock people out at all. And then in 2 and 3 you can, but they wake up pretty quickly. In this one, when you knock someone out, that's it. They are not. I haven't even seen someone be woken up the way that in some of the Commandos games, at least some of them. I forget if it's all. Yeah, if in one of those games, if a guard discovers someone you've knocked out, but not you, they'll wake up the person that was knocked out. If they discover you, they're going to attack you, you know. But yeah, I think that brings us nicely to, so some of the things you can bring are indeed, you know, melee. So hypothetically, you could bring 2 melee into this. And right now I actually forget if you start with any of them, but again, you can always do that. Anyway, the melee remains that there are blunt that knocks out and sharp that kills. And you can throw any of them. Right now I forget if absolution. If I say something and you're sitting there thinking like, wait, that was also true in one of the previous games, and I don't say it, please just figure that I forgot. I haven't played Absolution in like 10 years, more. Yeah, more than 10 years. Last I played it was when I did my video on it. But I think that pretty much covers. So yeah, there's a tremendous level of freedom there, and it increases if you rise through the ranks, but it is present from the start. If I recall correctly, from the very start, there are multiple silenced pistols for you to start a level with. I forget if a weapon drop, if there's always one weapon drop unlocked, or if you do have to, but you also you never need a weapon drop. You can always complete a level out. It's just challenges. You can't do certain challenges. Anyway, but yeah, the various, yeah, you can, do a weapon drop in a level of one of the following: a submachine gun, a shotgun, an assault rifle. Right now I forget if the first sniper is available from the very start, but certainly it did not take me terribly long to unlock if it was not there from the very start. So that's worth... So, right, I guess I... Just briefly to make sure it's said. I didn't do this myself, but hypothetically, yeah, if you play through several levels and then you're like, I wish I had more stuff, you can just go back. There is a level selector. You can go back, replay an earlier level to rise through the ranks of that level, get the extra stuff there. I chose, and that's perhaps also, if you find yourself thinking there's a lot of challenges, I want to do them, but not right now, move on to the next level. There's no one stopping you. But the yeah, I think that pretty much covers I guess the fiber wire. Yeah, so this is the first time that the fiber wire is optional for this sort of, it used to be your standby me for if you are trying to take someone out at short range, like there's always been others. Like the very training mission of the first one tells you, hey, knives are also a thing. But the this time the reason you can go without is that you can knock someone out without anything in your hands, and also kill them if that is what you want to do. I don't remember if in Absolution you could kill with nothing in your hands. Also worth noting, okay, I forget if in Absolution they always broke, but I remember at least some would break. In this one, sometimes break. Like if you try to use a soda can as a melee weapon, it will break. You cannot use that one soda can more than once. There are a bunch in this one that do not break. You can keep using them for a long time. There's actually at least one challenge that is about using the same melee weapon a bunch of times in that one level, in that one run. Anyway, the other thing that I wanted to say about that was that I've decided that I'm going to sprinkle some of the shortcomings throughout the video so that there's not just one complainy section. One thing about the soda can is that a lot of the time, if you see a soda can, that means you can pick it up and you can throw it as an audio distraction, or you can use it as a weapon. I already described the details of that. The thing is, every so often, and I guarantee you, it's not that I saw something that I thought was a soda can, and this is like me being annoyed about that. No, there are soda cans in levels that you cannot pick up, and you don't know until you've walked all the way over to them. And I just wish, I get this idea of like, well, the design on this game is immaculate. Like, every place feels so lived in. Nowhere just feels like it was designed. And I get saying, oh, this place could use a soda can, and maybe they were like, we would like to make it one of the ones you can pick up and throw, but the level, we're getting to the point where it can't quite sustain more stuff you can interact with. I wish they had made it something else. That's all. Yeah. I guess that pretty much brings us to the the voice acting for 47 is pitch perfect as usual, as well as his dialogue. And this does also bring back Diana. And it basically starts with this sort of prequel. It's saying this is what happened after the end. Oh, let's see. No, I'm pretty sure it's after the end of the first. No, wait, shit. Sorry. I guess it is after the training mission of the first game. Then the prologue of this game happens, and then the rest of the games up to and including this one. And yeah, I don't have much to add to what Carolyn Petit said about the training. It is one of those cases where, every so often IO Interactive, and I'm allowed to say the following because I'm Danish, nobody hits my little brother but me. Sometimes Danish creatives, of which I suppose I can't quite count myself as one, I'm just a fan, try to be a critic, like a reviewer. Sometimes Danish creatives get silly ideas and then they make like James Cameron and no one tells them no. Because yeah, it is kind of silly, this idea that so basically the training missions in this one, which has always been, the only time that they could completely make the training thing make sense was in the first one, because it's the first, you can't really do the exact same, the second one, it's essentially like fine, but it's more of a like just refamiliarize or kind of like, this is where 47 trains kind of thing. In concept, in universe, it's perfectly fine. Contracts, I'm down with the fact that, basically that's in his head. Like, certain things about the entire game is like, this is how he remembers. There's several levels in contracts that are remixes of the first game, And I guess, I don't know, I suppose the one from Blood Money is not terrible. It's basically just a mission, but for some reason you're being told, okay, so this is how you play the game. Those are always, those can often be a little silly. Every so often you'll have a video game where they'll like, okay, so I know you know this stuff, because it's like, wait, am I going directly from this training to an active mission? Like, that feels like, you sure you don't want to, anyway. But I don't even remember what Absolution. Oh wait, yeah, Absolution. I think it was also just the first regular mission. But yeah, in this one, yeah, it's they the ICA training made some places that you can and when I realized that it was supposed to be staged and these are like actors and such, I thought, oh, so there's going to be this thing where comically when I take someone out, the guns are blanks and they're going to pretend it's paintball and go like, oh, you shot me, and just lay down. No, you do kill people in these, and I appreciate that the ICA would do this. I'm just wondering how the fuck you talk someone into that. Maybe that's why they panic when you as 47 start killing and it's noticed even in the training missions. It's maybe they're not acting, maybe they're just like, this was not in the goddamn contract. Maybe I should have read the fine print. See, that's how ICA, large corporation, Anyway, yeah, because there's an achievement, a challenge called, give that stunt man a raise. So yeah, you actually did take that person out, which is also one of those things where it makes it a little silly that you can go back and redo it if these are actors. And I appreciate, oh yeah, but like redoing it, that's not like in universe. No, technically the first of the 2 training levels you play through twice. So don't know how that's supposed to work. Like in universe, like they say, okay, you're gonna run through this again. And that's also one of those where I wish that they had maybe just made that optional. Just say, hey, would you like to play this again? Because like one of the things they're doing is training you to play it again. But for one thing, the challenges already do that. For another, like, you sure you don't want to just make it clear that that's an option? Like, just as soon as you complete one that as soon as you complete that first training level, it could say, if you would like, you can replay the level. You'll gain XP, you'll rise through ranks, you'll unlock new equipment, but it's up to you. That is personally how I would have done it. And I forgive them because I am just that kind of person. No, because, well, I try to be. Anyway, the training level is not particularly long, and the second time you play through it, it does really underline, hey, there's multiple ways. Like, that's something I loved about this one. Like, they have just gotten so good by the point they made this. It's not an exaggeration. There are always multiple viable ways to take out any of the targets in this, like, across all the levels, every single target. Multiple ways that you can do, and most of the time get away with. Some of them are just like fun and like, okay, you're not going to get away with that, but it was cool to do, and plan. Sometimes there's even a challenge for accomplishing it, but the it's I guess I'll briefly note, since there are challenges for the 2 training levels right now. I actually don't even remember if there's like XP and unlockables in that one, or if that only starts with the first regular level. But once you get to the regular levels, as soon as you complete the level, it will offer you to redo the level, which maybe you want to do because you didn't get as high a rating. Maybe you want to do for challenges. But for the training levels, they don't have that, even though there are challenges, which, I'm sorry, that felt a little silly to me. It just moves on to the next level. I don't really know why they did it like that, and I'm really glad that eventually, when I finally, after probably too many hours, because I was so thorough, but after so many hours, thorough and not like, if I completed a challenge, I would then complete the level and then start over for the next challenge, other than the ones where multiple challenges were doable in one run. But yeah, I was relieved to see that the regular levels do actually just have the replay thing. Anyway, the also really appreciate, this is one of those games where if you want to rewatch one of the cinematics that come, let's see, I guess it's before a level. It's not so there's at least one level that has a finishing cinematic, but the ones that are before levels you can replay from the menu, and you can also always replay the mission briefing, but you can also skip them if that's what you want to do. But I think that probably does bring us to, I love that we are once again international. I did not like how much of Absolution was set in America. And once again, they found some really cool places around the world. Like, I think it's very clear, like really with most of the ones leading up to this one and this one, like they sat down, they took a look at a map of the world, and they had a careful discussion. What country and culture would the player love to see something really offensive by? By this point, in some ways they've gotten better. It is, but there's still some. Seriously though, it maintains. I'm more and more coming to terms with the fact that we Danes just, there's a certain edginess to a lot of our humor. I try myself to not say things that are like kicking down. Yeah, I am not going to make any excuses for it. It's an aspect of my culture that I no longer feel quite so connected to, as I am learning more and more from international YouTubers about, sensitivity towards minorities. Anyway, I think this is probably a good place to talk about. So this is not the first time that you can use some sort of poison on, at least some within the games. But this is the first time where it is so incredibly open. Like, there are places where it's like, oh, you want to poison this thing? And like at first I was like, why would I poison that thing? And then, sometimes I would try and be like, oh, I didn't realize that would happen. And other times, it was like, oh, this is for like contracts. It's to make it so open as possible. If you see a drink that is not a soda can, and I really appreciate that that's the case, because they could easily, this could have been much more confusing if otherwise. But yeah, see a cup of coffee, see a open bottle, that sort of thing. And so sometimes also food. You can go up to it, you can poison it. Just be aware, you might be spotted doing it. And that's where disguising yourself as someone who prepares food is going to come in handy, because they're going to be like, oh, he's just refilling the drink, for example, or I guess there was something more that needed to be done to that bit of food or something. And yeah, in general, like, this is the most emergent gameplay heavy up to and including it. I was like, genuinely, I played it thinking like, I think the only game I know that has an even larger level of this is probably the first Deus Ex. And like, there's no shame in not being able to, that fucker has like, I want to say it's like 10 augmentations, superpowers. So it's like, oh, of course that one's gonna, like, running fast, what's it called, lifting heavy objects, all this kind of, obviously that's gonna lead to incredible. And this game is not trying to outdo it in that regard. It outdoes it in others, so because like, genuinely, at the end of the day, in that, you know, you can talk to people, you can use violence, you can sneak. In this, you can do those, but you can also, although this is not like super heavy on, you know, when there's like dialogue, it tends to just be that you walk up to the person and ask them to follow you, or tell them, hey, you can go to this place now, and that's of course a way for you to be able to isolate them and take them out. I was reminded of Get Carter, a movie that I will at some point do a video on. Not the shitty Stallone one, obviously. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever do a video on that one, but I'm not saying that's, you know, that movie sucks. But the Michael Caine one, you know, yeah. This is a game that trains you to think in a very specific way. You know how Portal, video is forthcoming, have you thinking with portals? This has you thinking like 47. Throughout this, like, it started very early, and I suppose I had some practice from playing the other games, but even more so here. Started very early and just got more and more, you know, as I walked through the levels of this, I was constantly like eyeing opportunities. You know, there are so many steps to a successful hit, and yet, like, oh my god, the fucking balance. I want to just very briefly finish off the poison, and then I swear I'll get back to this. Because the thing is, in some of the others, yeah, you can poison someone and they'll die. In this, that is an option. Do note that if that happens in public, questions might be asked. But other than that, yeah, you know, there is emetic poison, which makes them puke, and that is a way to isolate, and it is also sometimes a way to get them to, you know, walk up to a toilet and puke into that. And that's one of the places where you have this, I don't know, is that still considered edgy? I don't even know. It's been in a bunch of stuff, but yeah, you can swirl them to death, you know, from that position. Oh, that briefly to mention. So one of the things with the fiber wire, if you don't use that, you can knock them out from behind. The you know, it's the what's it called? Sleeper hold, I think they call it. You know, that takes several seconds, and you are more likely to be spotted while that than fiber wire, because the fiber wire in this one is almost instant. Like, you know how in some of the others sometimes the fiber wire would take several seconds. That's what they do with the sleeper hold now. And but it also means that, you know, if you're trying to not kill anyone other than the target, which there might be a challenge asking you to, you know, then it's, you know, the sleeper hold. If you want to kill them like that, you can, before you finish the sleeper hold, you can snap their neck, which makes noise and could attract attention, or you can snap their neck afterwards, and you can do that after dragging them away from where they might be heard, you know. But yeah, so multiple different kinds of, you know, drugging drinks and such. And on at least one occasion, you can do it while posing as someone that the person trusts. And they'll be like, how could you do this to me? Like, this is not a game to be playing if you don't have a morbid sense of humor, because it is going to fuck with your emotional state. You are going to be like, what the fuck did I do? What have I become, while standing next to gargoyles, because Sam Raimi wonderfully decided to reference The Hunchback of Notre Dame. If you haven't watched Darkman 1 in a while, you know, you may have forgotten how amazing it is. I would never, but, you know, and if you've never watched it all and you know, enjoy the work of Sam Raimi, like, I appreciate it's not for absolutely everyone, but my God, I maintain it is my favorite. I'm not saying it's necessarily the best he ever fucking made, but I don't know if he'll ever be able to top that one. Anyway, yeah, so that covers poison. So yes, yeah, the thing with the oh shit. See, that's unmedicated ADHD for you. Tried medication once, made things worse. What was the other thing that I was talking about? And then I wanted to finish up the poison. So the, I guess it was the emergent gameplay. Yeah, so the, basically everywhere you go, there's each level is a sandbox, and they are, as mentioned, quite large. That's also, like, if that's going to intimidate you, I will admit there were times where I was like, this level is big. I would definitely say, one thing I didn't love about some of the levels in Contracts is sometimes there's just so far to travel between places, and there's nothing really, there might not be guards on the way, and it might just, like, there's at least one of those where it's kind of tense, more than a little tense, because you knock someone out, and then you have to travel a bit of distance, and it's like you're sitting there thinking, please don't tell me that the person woke up, because there's a little pop-up message. In this one, no area is boring. I'm sorry, it was a little boring, especially on replay. I get what they were doing, but the thing is, you could also have that without it being boring to travel. You could just have some distance to travel where there are guards along the way, and you have to walk, because if you run, they'll suspect you. That accomplishes the same thing without being a little bit boring. And that would also mean that if they do, realize, if the person wakes up and says, oh, someone's out there, right now I forget, is it because you end up wearing that person's clothes as a disguise? Maybe, I don't quite remember. But yeah, you spend the first bit of a level just doing recon, and I am so happy to say there was never a time doing recon in this. Unlike Absolution, where it happened a non-zero number of times, there's never a time in this where just doing recon, I was like, oh, well, here's a target. They're already isolated. I guess I'll just take them out. Like, that's boring. I was always like, there are times where you might come face to face with a target early in a level without having to do very much. But what I love, they made such a smart choice here. In this game, the targets are rarely alone outside of your interference or some select places. So you have to get them into a position. That's the thing. Like in some of the others, yeah, I mean, essentially you're looking for the right place to do it, but you're not really worried about, sometimes the target will just already be alone. Sometimes it's one of the ones where you don't have to not be seen, or, well, the only way, you just have to shoot the guards first, I guess, but in this one, it's so much more satisfying when you find a way to actually, yeah, that's, and they, one of the things also, so there's a lot you can do in this game. There's not a huge amount of levels, which I prefer. I want them to make these, that's one of my criticisms of the second one. I feel like there's just too many levels in that one. And I already mentioned the first is one of my favorites. Not a huge number of levels in that one, In this one, yeah, and every single level is memorable. I would say this is the only, other than Blood Money are little subplots that you can take advantage of, you know. And basically, and something I also quite appreciated, your targets will have, most of the time, a set routine that, if undisturbed, will just play out, you know, however many times the amount of time you play the level for allows for. And this means that, you know, if you just give them a few minutes, I would say, I think the longest might have been, was it 3 minutes? Maybe it was 5, from the very start to the very end. So if you catch them right after the moment of opportunity that you were going for, you know, just wait those few minutes. But there's always that, you know, and that also means that no matter how great your plan is, if you don't time it exactly right, that's it. But I think, does that pretty much, I guess I'll just briefly note, as usual, there are a bunch of pop culture references, including to stuff that's some years back. There's a reference to a Britney Spears song, you know, in one of them. And maybe it's just me, I kind of love when Danish game developers do this sort of thing. It also appeared in the Forest Quartet. There's at least one thing in here that you are not going to understand if you do not understand Danish. And, like, that's a decision, you know. I saw a video about someone discussing it, and they were like, well, none of us know how to fucking say this, but this is here, this is what I'm talking about, you know. But yeah, because, like, I appreciate our language is not particularly spoken outside of Scandinavia, you know, except for, like, people who maintain the language and came from Scandinavia, you know. But and at the same time, like, listen, the joke they're making using Danish there, they could not have made in English. Plain and simple. It's a language-based joke that only works with our pronunciation of a specific word. Anyway, yeah, so a level will have you, you know, determining the routine of targets. And yes, outside of the training missions, there's always at least 2. There's no regular level on this where there are not at least 2 targets, which is part of why just shooting your way through is not very likely to be viable. You know, I mean, hypothetically, you could take out the targets and then shoot your way out of the level if you want to do that, you know, for whatever reason, which I'm not saying it's not fun, but the okay, now I feel like I should just briefly note, in real life, I favor gun control. I consider violence to be ideally the absolute last resort. Now, the yeah, because if there is gunfire or some other kind of, if there's something very clearly, okay, this was no boking accident, yeah, then, and it's gonna say, you know, target lockdown or target escape, and then it will give you a specific number of seconds, and if you do not take out the target before that time is up, that's it. You're gonna have to redo, like, if you saved before, you know, the target started leaving the level, or just before the time ran out, you have another shot there. But that's the, oh, god damn it, I meant to say earlier, I only played this on the regular difficulty. I know that there's, like, I think you have to complete the level, I forget how many times. It might be one of the things you earn by rising through the ranks, but the first time you play any of the levels, I believe you are on regular difficulty, and then you can unlock and play on professional difficulty, which has increased challenges or difficulty. I did not play that one at all. I found it sufficiently challenging normally. But yeah, you know, maybe you will get someone to vomit so that you can get their disguise. use that disguise to get past, into a secure area, and you get the target to lower their guard, or maybe you just get close enough and then you hide near the target. And I also really appreciate it. So I mentioned noise distractions. If you try to use that on a target and there's a guard nearby, they will say, "Can you check that out?" Which does not necessarily mean that it's a wash, because maybe you lure that guard far enough away from the target that you can knock them out or kill them if that's what you want to do. And then that's one less guard, although they don't always have just the one. It's like Lays. But I think, yeah, and another thing that's great here, multiple escape routes. So you don't have to slavishly, that's a thing that I did sometimes find a little excessive. If you're trying to suit only Silent Assassin a blood money level, you may have to sneak the whole way back through the level with no shortcuts or anything. That got a little bit annoying, and I really appreciate that here. And it also just feels like, why wouldn't there be? I'm just trying to escape the level. I'm not trying to fly to the fucking moon to build a place to live there. Fun how eventually Elon Musk was like, "Oh right, the moon. How did I forget the moon? Why would we go to Mars?" He's already struggling to get. Yeah, moving on. The and as soon as an exit is available, once you've taken out the targets, and there might be more than taking out the targets to do in the level, but it will tell you. Yeah, at that point, they are, there's a UI indicator for each of them, and it will say, X amount of, I think it's in meters, how many meters away, and make it very clear which direction it is in, although it's not going to be a straight line, but yeah. And I think, I definitely do also want to mention, so in addition to lockpick, there are also areas that are protected by these key cards, and maybe you'll be able to find a key card, but maybe you won't. And at least some of the time you cannot you cannot open those doors without the key card. There is at least one case where you can. Also note, lockpicking attracts attention. And if you are not using a lockpick, but you're trying to get through a door, crowbar will open the door, but in addition to it being visually, like they're gonna clock that as suspicious, it makes noise. It can be heard for several meters away, and yeah. You can now also blow open doors. There is, in fact, I think if I recall correctly, you have to get this by, upgrading. But I believe the game starts you off with one type of explosive. I did not test that on doors. I think, no, I'm not going to speak on it. I simply do not know. But again, you don't have to be able to blow your way through in order to get these, yeah, anyway. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's essentially, you are given puzzles to solve across this game. Like, how do you, yeah, basically, like, when you start a level, you have to find a way to get close to the targets, or yeah, you have to get to a position where you can take out the targets, and then you have to get yourself to an escape point. And that is one larger puzzle that is made up of several smaller ones. One thing is just getting to the place where the target is, because sometimes you might start at the opposite end of a level. And as mentioned, the levels are sufficiently interesting. It's never boring. And, you might not be able to go very far before there's a guard saying, "You can't go here. Not dressed like that. You are not turtly enough for the Turtle Club." And once you access the area where the target is, you will then have to find a way to get to a position where you can also take them out. And again, sometimes, if you want to shoot, you might be able to, but I've explained the issues with that. The AI is fantastic. They really, except for when it isn't. I'll speak more to that, but I wanted to finish off the but yeah, there are always multiple paths, multiple entry points. It's not always a door even, and I wanted to expand a little on that. So I guess this is also a decent time to note that at first I wasn't sure, but by the end I was really impressed by their restraint, because like early on I thought, oh, every level is going to have this, isn't it? And now that I've played the entire one, I was like, I mean, no, they did actually, because like I mentioned, sometimes you can find like coins. Like one of the first levels, oh, maybe it was the first, some really early levels certainly, it's extremely easy to find stuff that you can throw to, attack or distract. And then a little later, it was like, oh, there's less, or they are getting increasingly difficult to get your hands on, because that's the thing. Like, yeah, you pick up a soda can. If you're wearing a disguise or nobody notices, that's fine. But if you're not a chef and you pick up a kitchen knife, people are gonna notice, So very nicely done on that. And yeah, right. This is also a really great place to praise. So I hope I'm not like fucking glazing this thing. Obviously, every so often I mention an issue, but the I guess this is also a good place to just briefly. So the UI will provide some assistance. You can turn some of that off if you really don't want it, to increase the challenge. But one thing is, when you walk up to something that you can interact with, it will tell you what you can do with it, even if you can't do it yet. It'll just say, hey, you need this thing. Like, the first time I walked up to a drink, I was like, what can I even do with this? And it just said, you need poison to poison it. And yeah, like there were times where I was like, I had no idea I would be able to do that. And because I then knew, it was like, okay, so if I find a screwdriver, I can fuck with this electrical thing. I guess I know what I'm doing next. And they do a good job of like, okay, you want to find a screwdriver? Well, is anyone nearby, doing some sort of manual labor that requires a screwdriver, for example, or is there perhaps an area of the map that is set up, maybe there's a tool shed, and yeah, there is no one item that does everything. There's no multi-tool. You have to find the different ones if you want to be able to do the different ones, and it makes sense. Yeah, you want to, mess with the plug so that you can electrocute someone, screwdriver. You want to tighten or unscrew some sort of shit, it's not a spoiler. Okay, there are things you can do with a wrench, for example, and I guess this is also a decent time to note, you can now only carry, like, you can carry multiple pistols, though you may not be able to find more than one kind in the level, and then there's the one you bring, so that's, you can use that as like ammo pickup or something, but you cannot carry multiple large weapons. Oh, well, let's see. Is it maybe the case with a submachine gun? But certainly not like a shotgun or, yeah, when in some of the others you could like, oh wait, no, shit. Maybe the larger ones you could always only ever carry one. I forget, but certainly I remember playing the first one and gathering like several pistols in just one level. That's not really the case here, and you still cannot. The dual wield is. I don't know if they bring it back for 2 or 3, but it's just not, by this point they realized, does it really make sense for this sort of thing? And again, there's enough fun shooting stuff to scratch that itch. By and large, again, Contracts is if you primarily want that. Anyway, yeah, basically, you and you can also, you can see from a little bit of distance if the if you can interact with something. There's a little thing you can see, and then you walk up to it, and then it says, okay, here's what you can do. One thing, I don't know why, it doesn't matter how hard I try, every so often there are multiple functions for the same key, and I don't know why they didn't just have you use another key, because so much of the time it happens when there isn't a function on the other key, so just have us use the other key. You know, for example, if you're climbing pipes, which you can now do, you know, sometimes you can get to the roof, sometimes it allows you to move between the ground floor and one of the upper floors in either direction without having to use stairs, which might be guarded. But yeah, you can slide down pipes, which I think that should be a thing in any game where you can climb something that hypothetically you could slide down. Not just because it's fun to do, but yeah, for some reason the key for that is the same as the one for moving to the other position of like, yeah. So I don't know why they didn't just put it on one of the other ones, and maybe that works better on console. I wouldn't rule that out. The also the let's see, yes, suspicion. The suspicion system is by far the best it has been up to the point of this game in this series. They really do get the yeah, like I already mentioned that if you are about to do something context sensitive that will attract attention, you know, there's a little bit of there's this red thing at the HUD that tells you what you can do. Red thing with an exclamation point inside, and if I recall correctly, you're told maybe in the maybe in one of the training missions, in fact, that means if someone sees you doing that, you're gonna be in trouble. And there are some guards who can, there are called enforcers in this. There are NPCs that can see through your disguise, and I thought they did a really great job on, because you know, some of the targets, if you're disguised as one of their bodyguards, they're like, I know my bodyguards. I work with my bodyguards. You, sir, are not one of my bodyguards. But you are never taken completely by surprise by this, because if there is an enforcer, there is a white circle above their head. That simply means if this person sees you, they'll see through your disguise if they are looking at you for long enough. And I think there's also a thing about, like, if they start to see you and you run, that's going to increase the, you know, then they're going to be like, okay, that person is definitely up to no good, starting trouble in the neighborhood. But it never happens without that warning. And they are also, if not the target, NPCs that are enforcers are marked on the minimap. And I'm really glad that is something, if I recall correctly, Absolution was the one that introduced the minimap. I appreciate the minimap. I think Absolution did a smart thing there, because like at the end of the day, like I think it works fine for like the first game where levels are not necessarily huge, at least not all of them, and there's some logic to where you're supposed to go. But by this point, like, no, we need a minimap, you know. And I also really appreciate the minimap also reminds, like, if you're dragging a body, or if you have something on you that is visible that you're not supposed to have, every NPC on the minimap, you know, is like bright white rather than gray. I don't know if I love the fact that they are gray, whether they are conscious, unconscious, or dead. Or wait, are they? Maybe not if they're dead. I forget if it's also... Anyway, that was something where I quite appreciated. I want to say it was contracts where they would be crossed out if they were dead, you know. But on the other hand, like, it's not a game where you're constantly supposed to be going around taking out everyone, so I do appreciate that. But yeah, the there was rarely a time where I was playing this and I was like, wait, why is this person suspicious of me? And I was never caught off guard by an enforcer. Yeah, basically, if you violate someone's personal space, they might become suspicious. And sometimes that can actually be used to your advantage, if that's something you're trying to accomplish. And yeah, one thing you're definitely going to want to be, if I already mentioned, you can be frisked. When there is a frisk, they will tell you, if you want to go this way, you have to be frisked. They don't immediately launch into it. You can walk away, you can, stash. That's another thing you can do in this game. You can stash at least some things. Like, for example, there might be a garbage can where you can stash, and then you can let yourself be frisked, and then it's still there. If you leave a gun visible, if an NPC finds it, they'll get a guard. As soon as a guard is aware there is a gun, they will pick it up and they will place it in, I forget if there's more than one spot in a level, but there's at least one spot in each of these levels where a gun found will be placed, or might be placed if there's more than one. And if you want the gun back, you'll have to get to that place. And I mean, I don't know if I even have to spell it out, but yeah, that place might have a bunch of guards. So if you don't want to lose a gun, don't leave it somewhere lying. And guns are now dropped by when you take out an enemy, the gun is dropped rather than being on their person, which means that if you take someone out and then hide their body, if you're not fast enough, the gun might be found by someone. That's okay. That does not mean mission failure, at least not outside of professional. I can't speak to professional difficulty. I think that more or less right. So yeah, and if you do, if they find something during frisk, they'll aim their guns at you. You can still fake surrender, and I think I'm more okay with it here. Let's see, was it in Blood Money? Or was it Absolution? I think it might have been Blood Money. I'm not saying Blood Money is perfect. I already mentioned the, tutorial mission is a little... One of the other things about the tutorial mission of that one is that you have to kill a bunch of people, and then for the rest of the game, it's like, no, don't kill anyone. What? And then the final mission is like, okay, now kill everyone. What? Like, mixed messages, Jesus. It's like, in that regard, it's like, Trump or his staff personified as a video game. Anyway, that's not how you use the term personified. I think that does bring us to yeah. And something I really appreciated here, if you walk into an area where you are not allowed, it will tell you so. That was another thing that was sometimes a problem. And that's another thing. I am not making any excuses for how the early ones, I think even by Blood Money, there was some issue with, the suspicion is, sometimes it's like, what the fuck is your problem with me, man? Like, I look, I'm wearing a guard's disguise. I'm in an area where guards are allowed. Why are you, and they'll just start shooting you. In this one, if they are suspicious of, let's see, first they're just suspicious, and they might, if it's an NPC, they'll go get a guard. If it's a guard, they will be like, stop right there. Who are you? What are you doing here? That sort of thing. And then you can fake surrender, or you can try to make a run for it. And especially if it's an NPC who realizes, who's suspicious of you, maybe you can hide. And in this one, and I love that, eventually they stop looking for you. I'm not sure that was ever the case in any of those. Maybe Absolution, but that was something. Yeah, I think by this point the time was right for it. There is some leeway for you to make mistakes, as long as you don't make really obvious, ridiculous ones. Like, yeah, if you try to just shoot the target in front of a bunch of people, you're not necessarily going to be walking away from that. You might have fun doing it, but, and there is at least one challenge in at least some of the levels that's just for shooting someone in the head. You can do that. You don't, some of those you don't even have to do it to the target. It can be anyone. Anyway, I feel like, yeah, so yeah, other than that, and the guards will immediately start shooting if you are shooting. They won't ask questions if they hear a gunshot and then they see you holding a gun. But when you are walking into, a lot of the time, you can tell. Like, it's like, okay, for example, first mission is like this hotel kind of place. If you try to walk into like the area that has, are those the caterers? It's been so many hours and thus months since I played that level. I think you can try to walk directly into the caterers, and the guards there are like, you're a guest here. You don't belong back there, And you can still choose to try to walk past them and then may have to fight. This is a good place to briefly talk about. So in Absolution, you can only use, from what I recall. No, never mind. It was at Switch. I already said that this video. Anyway, in this one, you can engage in short-ranged combat if you don't have a weapon. And no, you don't have to like awkwardly pistol whip with the pistol like in the second one. No, I haven't forgotten that. I know that game is like 24 years fucking old. It annoyed me back then. I still find it really irritating that they just like put it on another key, like I'm not trying to pistol whip right now. I'm trying to fire the pistol, but anyway, in this one, you can engage in short-ranged combat, and if you do that with an NPC, that's it, like you knock them out with one punch. It might be heard, and obviously if it's seen, that's gonna, but if you try it with a guard, they can fight back, and it's this QTE, sorry, with WASD. And that by itself, it's kind of fucking inspired, because if you are in an area where there's only one guard, yeah, you can take them out like that. But if there's two and the other one has a submachine gun or an assault rifle, I mean, if you want to test your luck, I guess you can, And let's see. I think this is a good place to note that the maybe I should put it somewhere else. No, yeah, this is a good place. So I noted in my video on Absolution that it was becoming too much like other stealth games, and I try not to be one of those snobby purist fucks who's just like, oh, this is different and therefore bad, because that fucking sucks. That is a conservative way of thinking. It is detrimental to creative expression, and it's way too often weaponized against minorities. Like, remember that whole thing where a bunch of conservatives were like, this person of color is not my Spider-Man or Captain America, and it's like, I'm sorry, could you get a fucking life? Do you have actual problems in your life? Because I want those solved. I think we should be striving towards solving everybody's problems. But I'm sorry, it is difficult to take you seriously if you pretend like that's an actual problem. Anyway, the thing is that Hitman is in some ways unique. Like, there are other stealth games. I fucking love Thief and some of the Splinter Cells. Okay, if I'm being brutally honest, I kind of love all the Splinter Cells except Conviction, but, well, I haven't played yet the PC version of Double Agent. I do now own it. I am going to play it at some point. I don't know if it's going to be super soon. I'm trying not to burn through games that I've been waiting to get to play for years. So, yeah. I already, like, I've now done both Marvel's Avengers and this one, so I really want to make sure that I save some of those. Because, like, there's not really the game that I'm planning to play that I'm not looking forward to, but it's different when it's one you've been waiting for years. Psychonauts 2 is also in the future, for example. So is Outlast 2. Anyway, yes. The other thing was that yeah. Nope, wasn't that. God damn it. I swear I'm not going to spend forever trying to recall. If I do not remember, I will move on to something else and circle back if I remember before I'm finished with the video. But the other thing... Oh, I forgot to do that. I'll just... There we go, that's better. Yes, so the... Yeah. a lot of the time I would be able to deduce, okay, this area must be off limits in this disguise. I would not necessarily hate if they were marked on the map or mini-map, because there were times where I was like, I'm not allowed in here. And I think they largely do a great job of making sure there's guards posted. You know, if you are trying to get to an area, that is something I really appreciate. If you're trying to get to an area through the official path, you know, a door or doorway or something, if you're not like climbing in there or that sort of thing, yeah, you know, there will be a guard and they'll say, you are not allowed here, you know, and it also tends to make sense. Now I remember the other thing. Okay, so this never became like Assassin's Creed, despite the climbing, despite the fact that you can, if you know, under certain circumstances, you can take out a lot of people. You can even fight hand to hand, that sort of thing. It never became like, I'm sorry, in Absolution, let's see, is it maybe the sniper? There was like a sniper mini game with that where they seemed to have some Assassin's Creed envy, and it just felt like, come on, guys, you were out of you took a break from making Hitman for so many years that Assassin's Creed kind of, you know, became huge because you weren't there to compete with them. I'm sorry, I do think that is part of it. It's a little silly to now be like, well, we're still here. Yeah, you got to deliver more if you want to call them out like that, you know, because like I'm not the biggest fan of Assassin's Creed. Let's see, Assassin's Creed, yeah, the last year I played it was 2012, which I believe was the year that Absolution came out. Certainly around that, yeah. Yeah, risk or two, fucking sort of look it up right now. But I'm sorry. I don't love Assassin's Creed 3, confusingly the fifth game in the series, but I do think in at least some ways it is better than Absolution. But this one never felt like it just became a different one, you know. But yeah, Hitman, Thief, Splinter Cell, and Assassin's Creed, they all have different identities, and you know, I appreciate that Assassin's Creed is not trying to be the most focused on stealth and really challenging the player. That is something that these other three were going for. I guess we could add Commandos to that, which also, you know, that's one of the things that frustrated me so much about Absolution going so mainstream was, listen, there's only so fucking many of these. Like, Splinter Cell eventually did give in and became, like, you can play Blacklist, which I love. It's my favorite Splinter Cell game. You can play that as a tactical shooter, and that is something I think really works about it, but it is also something that is like, you know, I'm not going to play that the way that I play Hitman, you know? And, you know, yeah, Thief and Commandos died. I guess Splinter Cell technically has as well. They keep going back and forth on if they're making, what was it, like a reboot, remake, remaster, or was it? Yeah, I don't think I haven't promised a new one, have they? And you know, it's over a decade since we got Blacklist. I guess they blacklisted the rest of the franchise, but the future entries anyway. Hitman is one of those, like, you know, by 2012 it had been around for over a decade, and that was the first time where it felt like they were kind of selling out a little bit, and I'm so glad they are so fucking back with this one. IO is one of those developers that I love so much. Like, Mini Ninjas is the only game of theirs that I'm like, okay, this just does not work. I can make a case for any of the others. I think I will actually play. So they're making some fantasy game. Those are not my. That's not a genre that I play everything in. You know, like science fiction, cyberpunk. Like, goddamn, you know, stealth. If it's not broken, I'll probably fucking play it. You know, but yeah, fantasy. You gotta really sell me on it. IO Interactive sells me on it by their making it. And I might actually play the fucking James Bond game, even though I haven't watched it. I know this is heresy to some people. I haven't watched James Bond movies since the, what was it called? Goldeneye. That was the last one I watched. I just kind of tired of the franchise. But I guess I might watch the newer movies before playing the game, because I'm thinking there'll be, I'm not necessarily saying continuity, but, references or something that, yeah. I'm not promising videos on any James Bond movies. I don't even know that I have anything to say that hasn't been said really well. Like, honestly, Renegade Cuts video on James Bond, on the various criticisms from a far left standpoint, yeah, like, absolutely fucking nailed it. Pointed out things that I hadn't even realized about the character, but, in watching that video, I was like, oh my god, that's why I stopped liking these fucking movies. They're so, yeah. Watch his video if you want to know. I'm not gonna try to restate and just butcher his arguments. But yeah, this feels like what they wanted to make from the very start for Hitman, and just the technology wasn't quite there. And to some extent, that was also the first full game they made, or at least released. So it's like, of course you're not going to be able to deliver something of this, like this. This is what you get working, 15 fucking years within the same business and just getting better and better. And that's something you see other than Mini Ninjas. They tend to make games that just get better and better, like even outside of just the franchises. I would definitely argue that the first Kane Lynch is better than Freedom Fighters. I am making a Freedom Fighters video. It might be months from now, though, but I'm definitely making one. Rest assured. I know it was causing you sleepless nights, but I think that does go. Yeah, so it brings us back to, so when you go into an area, and that's also something I appreciate, as soon as you go into that area, it will say if it is an area that you could get in trouble for being found in. Immediately, the minimap, yeah. So, hypothetically, if you haven't been spotted yet, quickly, if you didn't want to go into an area you're not supposed to, at least not yet, quickly, back up. And I really appreciate they specifically, I'll prove it. They specifically, the AI account, they knew that this might happen, because if you do that, if you go into a restricted area, a guard might be like, you don't belong here. If you back up immediately, he'll be like, okay, that's good, just stay away. He won't open fire like in some of the earlier ones. However, there is also such a thing as a hostile area. There are hostiles on the hill, and in those, they will open fire. There are no questions asked, and I really appreciate it. Like, I was never hugely surprised when that was the case, because it is places I don't think I'm going to give any of them away, but like, as soon as, like, there were times where I was like, okay, that area is probably hostile, and yeah. Let's see, I think, but yeah, also sometimes if you step into a restricted area, sometimes they will just say that you have to leave. Sometimes they will escort you out. They'll take a few steps, walk in front of you, and if you follow them and end up outside of the restricted area, that is when, they're going to be like, okay, now, I hope you learned your lesson. And they're not going to shoot. No one's going to, as long as you don't go back into the restricted area, obviously. But I really, really appreciated that. And I think even the first time, Diana actually commented on it, which I guess does bring us to another slight shortcoming. I think that on replay, they should disable the comments made by Diana that are clearly for the first time you play the level, because she will give you a brief lowdown every single time you have a target within sight. And if I recall correctly, it doesn't have to be close. Like, I think sniper scope also works, but yeah, she'll just, and it's not terribly long, but it is unskippable, and it's every time. And if you play a level a bunch of times to get different achievement challenges, yeah, I'm sorry, it gets annoying, and I don't know why they didn't just make it so that it's not there, but yeah, that's a thing. Another is that the opportunities, and I will explain those briefly. After you unlock an opportunity the first time, I don't think it should still tell you, oh, hey, there's an opportunity here. I think it should just not do that. And but yeah, the opportunities is a wonderful compromise it does not feel like they are selling out, because it is not news to anyone who's played one of these games that sometimes, I mean, if you played one before this, before Absolution, you will already know that sometimes the game will ask you to do something and it's like, okay, I'm not sure how. And, part of the, I think I personally, I can't speak for anyone else, but I personally had fun playing the first one and just trying out different things to see, like, okay, does this work? And, that was a game that liked luring you into traps. It was not unlike Limbo, the masterpiece. But the game, I mean, the video game, not the other kind of game. But yeah, in this one, and it's not for everything, but there are, I think it's maybe 5 per level. I could possibly, okay, let's go with around 5 per level. And basically, you can find them just by going into the menu. But otherwise, if you want, like, clearly the idea is, no, just like, do some recon, because you'll overhear someone say something and then it'll say, oh, there's not, opportunity revealing. And then it'll offer to track that opportunity. And the opportunities, they might not talk you through the taking out of a target, but they might get you inside an area close to the target, for example. And then you have to, close the distance. If you don't want that, I mean, you could call that training wheels. If you don't want that, don't track the opportunities, or hypothetically, you could also just ignore them. But yeah, just, if you accidentally track one and you're like, I don't want that, go into the menu, untrack. There you go. The game never forces you to accept help, but it also does not drop you in the thick of it with 0 options for help. And I think that does more or less cover. So the let's see. I guess this is a decent time to say I thought they did a really good job on like it kind of is on a whole other level, like how, okay, so at least once I happened to be spotted doing something I shouldn't by an NPC. And I ran to safety, and I happened to hide near, very close, within earshot of the guard that NPC ran to. He gave a description of what I fucking looked like and said what I did. I mean, there's so much fucking, imagine doing that, considering, I mean, I've already described how big this fucking game is. Like, literally, he said, there is a bodyguard right over there. He fired a gun and killed another bodyguard. Like, holy shit, there's so many variables in there. How do you, like, it, oh my god, I hope these voice actors and the dialogue writers were sufficiently compensated, because this must have taken for fucking ever to get, I mean, I'm not sure it gets, like, every single possible opportunity, and also just, the various NPCs have personality. Like, if you do something, violent near some, like, that's also, if you fire a gun, NPCs might just run off, but if you just punch someone or throw something very visibly, they'll express their personality in that, and I don't know if I can give too much away. Yeah, if they're, like, fancy, their monocles are practically popping off, for example. There's fancy people in the very first level, so that's not a spoiler. And disguises will be remarked upon. If you are a low-level, guard of some kind, and you encounter someone who's higher level, they'll call you a mall cop. If it's vice versa, the other one might say, goddamn, I wish I could wear that uniform, that sort of thing, Like, remember how fucking silent NPCs used to be in this game series? Like, in the early ones, they would basically not say anything unless they were shooting or being shot, you know. Now, I think that might... considering there's not a huge number of levels, I guess the fact that they are so varied, I appreciate some might say, is that really that impressive? Because, like, it's not that difficult when there's that many. I still really felt like they did a fantastic job. I was never entirely sure what the next level, where it was going to be, what kind of people I would be dealing with, all these various things. And yeah, genuinely, like, again, I appreciate there's not that many, so it doesn't sound as impressive, but keep in mind, like, it is months since I played, for example, the first... I 100% remember the training levels. They're just tutorials. They're just there to, like, tell you, okay, this is the stuff you can do in this game. But I remember them really well because they are so carefully crafted. And yes, even in the training levels, there are so many different ways to get between places, It's not a spoiler to say because let's see. I forget if they... No, yeah, I believe they say it in that first training level. If you see a fence, yeah, parts of that fence might not be climbable. There might be, like, sharp stuff on top. If you look enough, you might just find the place that you can indeed climb over. And that is, of course, if you're not wearing a disguise, that is, if you climb over something or you climb through a window, that sort of climb a building, yeah. And I'm so glad that the building climbing is so much more limited than something like Assassin's Creed, because I don't want this to be... I don't ever want Hitman to become Assassin's Creed. I was fine with playing 5 Assassin's Creed game, and I doubt I'll ever play another, Hitman, like, if they are still making these, when I'm in an old folks' home and can barely move, I'll find a way to play them. Now, I think that does cover that. So I feel like there is something else there that... right, this one does not have multiplayer. I believe either 2 or 3 sort of has that. The closest is you can make these contracts, and I obviously have not looked at all of them, but from what I understand, there are indeed, like, a ridiculous number of them, and yeah, and you can make your own. Anybody can make their own. That is one of the places where there is this kind of bug glitch thing. I had to complete the tutorial for making a contract 3 times before it registered and I got the achievement, the Steam achievement, but yeah, every so often there's just these little things that I think I'll slip those in here and there over the rest of this. I guess this is a decent time to just briefly bring up. So I understand some people have had worse experiences than I personally. Lag, I would say about 3 to 4% of the times that I sat down to play it, I would experience lag. But I don't think there was ever lag for more than 20 seconds in any of those. And a lot of the time, it was 2. It rarely crashed for me. It didn't never happen. Manual saving is usually possible, so, if you want to not lose any progress from crashes, that is your friend. Basically, it's only during, like, let's see, if enemies are well aware of your presence, you won't be able to save until you've dealt with them. That does bring up, so there's a couple of things I wanted to say there. So I think, yeah, so I already mentioned suspicious status. I don't need to say more about that one. There's one called searching. I guess it's self-explanatory. Yeah, does not last terribly long. Suspicious lasts until you've taken out the suspicious person, and they will even note if there is an unconscious witness to, something you did. Then there is compromised. which I'll just briefly explain. It might be self-explanatory, but yeah, your disguise is no longer viable. And something I love that they did here that is definitely different from at least some of the early ones is you cannot simply change disguise and then change back, or change to a different, hypothetically, let's say you're a bodyguard, you're disguised as a bodyguard, and you're compromised. If you change to another disguise and you are not seen changing, you will no longer be compromised. But if you change back to a bodyguard, even if it's from a different bodyguard, you will be compromised again. So yeah, if you don't want to be compromised, be extremely careful not to be seen, or to only be seen by someone that you can then take out without being seen as you're taking them out. It can be, yeah. And then there is combat. I don't need to expand on that. And then there is hunted, which means that they are actively looking for and trying to shoot you, but don't currently know exactly where you are. Or the ones who do are not capable of combat. They're going to go get a teacher. Other than that, I did want to note that is definitely an issue where, I admire that they've been building towards having larger crowds in the games, because that's, again, there's certain levels in the very first Hitman where there are a lot of individual NPCs, and then I think Contracts was the first time where they really did like crowds. There's a dance club in Contracts that has like crowds dancing, and this one has even larger groups, and sometimes the AI just kind of stops. Like, so I didn't make a habit of, but sometimes, yeah, I would go around taking out a bunch of people, and, there would be screaming and fleeing, and then every so often I would reach an area that someone just ran screaming through, and there's people just relaxing. And they might not even react to me immediately, even though I am clearly, like I'm visibly armed. That was the thing that I also wanted to make sure to briefly note. In this one, that's again, in some of the others, it's like, wait, I'm sorry, am I allowed to be armed if I'm wearing a disguise of someone who is armed? Otherwise, and sometimes they would have it be like, oh yeah, if it's the same gun, and you're in a very specific area, and you'll have to get shot in order to find out which ones, But in this one, if you are wearing, the disguise of like a guard or a bodyguard, police, that sort of thing, you can carry any weapon. And I appreciate that's not exactly realistic, but these games have never been realistic. That's just part of price of entry. That's if you cannot, and I say this without meaning to insult you or the game, go play the first Splinter Cell. That one's intensely realistic. I think it goes a little bit too far. It is constrictive, Tom Clancy was fond of extreme realism, which I think works better in the books. I've read a few of them. I think he was a decent enough writer. Some of the games and movies and such can be a little, yeah. But yeah, you can be carrying at least any gun. I'm not 100% sure if it, no, I think it at least, I'm not going to speak to it. I don't remember if it goes for visible like melee weapons, but certainly, yeah. And I was a little bit surprised about that, but yeah, that is if you want to be moving around the map with a sniper rifle, you may have to disguise yourself like that, yeah. But I think that does cover, let's see. There's at least one more thing that I really wanted to make sure to say about the, those were those, the, okay. The, yeah, AI, so I mentioned the NPCs. There's also sometimes, armed enemies who will just suddenly, like I came across an armed guard who was just standing around, even though there were other armed guards around, walking around and like, yeah. And This one also really encourages, there's a challenge for getting every single disguise, and no, you cannot just get that like by accident. Like if you're not trying to get every disguise, you're not going to get every disguise. And yeah, it was a ton of fun. I was at times thinking like, should I maybe, when you look up challenges, list the ones you've already gotten so you can like process of elimination? But I guess, there's only so many for the different levels, so ultimately I do think it was probably the right choice they made there. I do find it a little frustrating that some of the challenges, it's like, oh, it's only gonna count if I do it in this exact way. Like there's one where it's like, okay, you have to take this person out like this from this position when they're in that spot. And so I did it and it didn't count. And I had to look it up because I was like, well, what the fuck is like? And it turns out, oh, just, wait a few seconds before you take them out like that, then it'll count. And I don't think it would have been terrible if for those they had maybe made some sort of system where you could like go into the menu and say, okay, I'm going for this challenge, and then when you don't get it, it would just say it doesn't have to say exactly the solution, but maybe a hint. I don't think would have been terrible. Just something like maybe your timing was off, something like that. But yeah, and I'm sorry, there's a non-zero number of challenges where I'm like, I'm sorry, I did exactly what, I even looked up, I don't want to have to look up what other people said about how to do a challenge. I get that that's part of, I don't know, I want to be able to do this on myself as much as possible. But yeah, I'm not saying there's something wrong with, seeking out others, walkthroughs and guides and such. But yeah, like I would do exactly what clearly worked for someone else. And I think it might be that they're on console and I'm on PC, not Mac. But I should watch something with Justin Long again soon. Anyway, I did just watch Drag Me to Hell. That helped scratch the itch. But yeah, it just did not count for some reason, and that's more than a little annoying when this is how you get access to certain equipment and guns, and some of these challenges take time and effort, and then you don't get it, and they don't tell you what is wrong, why you didn't get it. Considering how much of the game tells you, I wouldn't have hated if that was the case. Also really appreciated the targets are also nicely varied, and as usual, they try to make sure that it's people that we think, oh, you're just the fucking worst, aren't you? And there are spots where you can really see the Danish morbid humor, because like a target will literally insult you or people that you are more likely to empathize with, or like be doing something where you're like, okay, what the fuck are you doing, And yeah, I don't know, maybe not everybody sees that and is like, it's just a video game, so I'm gonna take this person out. I'd be lying if I pretended like that was not usually my reaction in this. I think they did a really great job on that. Like, trust me, these are just the fucking worst. I already mentioned, in real life, violence should only ever be the last resort. Like, if I encounter, people like the targets in this game, I want them to be prevented from harm, and I want them to engage in restorative justice. It's catharsis. It's fiction. It doesn't mean anything about, like, for real, in real life, there was this person that I accidentally bumped into 15 years ago. Still, every so often, I'm like, oh shit, I hope that person wasn't upset. So, media, fiction is the only, that's my outlet for, of course, sometimes, we all get angry. I try really hard to never do anything in real life in person. Yeah. Anyway, I think that does bring us to, so yeah, I've seen some say that the game is grindy. I prefer to express it as, depending on how you play it, it can be grindy. I think I've said all that I really wanted to about that. I just really wanted to make sure to make that distinction. And, you will probably be happy with this game even if you don't play it for 80 fucking hours like me. Let's see, if I had to guess, I think you can probably get through this in maybe 10 or less, depending on how much you want to explore. And if you use opportunities and just play each level once, yeah, it's not going to take you a ridiculous amount of time. Yeah. Now, the tools for creating contracts, indeed excellent. I'm not sure they're necessarily better than the ones in Absolution, but I don't think they need to be. That was one thing that game did nail. And I'm so glad that they listened to feedback. They were looking at like, oh, wow, people are still making and playing contracts in Absolution. Let's do it again, because this is a different game engine. It's not like they just ported it over. This is not like how the third game is a very similar engine to the second game, because they were, well, let's see. What were they were doing something, yeah, because they were already working on the fourth game. And they were like, oh, the fourth game's going to take a while. We got to keep interest high. And that's also, I believe, part of why several levels of the third game are from, are remakes of the first. That and them being like, we wish we could make, because I definitely did notice there's at least one level in the third game, I forget if it's more than one, that combines, I think it is maybe 4. I think, if I recall correctly, Contracts has one level in Hong Kong that combines at least elements of the 4 separate Hong Kong levels in the first game. And yeah, playing it in one level, it is like, I mean, yeah, this is what they wanted to do. They just had to split it up because of tech limitations. I mean, you even see that in like 2 of the levels have some of the same geography. Like one of them, you're like you're attacking something outside a building, and I don't remember if you can even go in. I certainly think you can't go very far in. And then the other level, you do go in. So yeah. Anyway, I think. Oh, right. If you really badly want to know which parts of the world this game visits, it is easy to find that out without spoiling anything else about the game, so I'm not going to say it here. And it is also very clear, I joked earlier that they offended the various, there is some of that, but they do also clearly have a certain admiration for these various cultures. And it is very intensely researched. Like there are details in here that it's like, wow, that is not something that just anyone knows about this. Yeah. There is some stereotyping. I'm sorry, we Danes, like, I think it's a combination of the fact that we're a small country that a lot of other countries don't pay that much attention to, and that, I'm not saying all, I wish all, a lot of Danes are able to travel, for example, compared to, like, I don't know the exact percentage, but, yeah, a certain percentage of Danes are able to travel to other countries compared to, like, Americans. And I also appreciate, America, if you just drive around America, you can get a number of different cultural experiences like that. So, that's part of it. But, big part of it is the low wages, little vacation time, that sort of thing. But the, yeah, which is definitely something that needs fixing. And I have high hopes for progressive politicians in America. Not that we've never been let down, but I think it is, yeah, we are getting to a place. Certainly, Trump and his administration have done a fantastic job making a case that things need to change. And I'm not talking about any kind of violence. I think we should work within the system. But, like, he's doing a lot of really unpopular things that he promised he wouldn't. And then you look at some progressives who promised they would fight for something, and they actually did. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah. So this combination of things culminates in some Danes like to make jokes about other cultures that are the kind of thing that you should only really joke about when you're a part of that culture. That's something I've noticed. I'll admit I myself used to struggle with. Some Danes just really don't quite understand that. Like there is this sense that like, no, but it's just a joke. And yeah, like we have a culture for that. And I'm not saying that that's okay. It's an explanation, not an excuse. Frankly, I do really wish, I try to not make insensitive comments about minorities. I try to keep those focused on people who are purposely doing harm and should be stopped non-violently, obviously. I try to avoid any kind of hate speech. Anyway, I think that does pretty much cover the so I already mentioned that there's pop culture references. They, as usual, also wear some of their inspirations on their sleeve. There is at least one Tarantino reference in this game, which, like, yeah, super unsurprising that IO love. I mean, if you play the first Kane and Lynch game, it's like, okay, this is what a game about like a Tarantino set of characters, that this is what you get. I think that really nails that. I haven't played. I know there's a Reservoir Dogs game. I'm not saying I'll never. Well, at this point, I guess I'll never play it. There was a while where I thought, oh, if it's on sale, I guess. But yeah, I think it makes more sense to do this sort of like taking some inspiration from instead of just doing a straight adaptation of one of the works. But yeah, they and that's one of the things, like the contracts and also challenges that don't require contracts. Those do actually, some of them do reference specific pop culture, including movies that clearly are fan favorites in the IO interactive offices. I think that brings us to, so the controls, I do think in some ways they did well on the streamlining, but there's also a couple of issues. Right now I forget, because I feel like, wasn't it also, I think they did do a decent job in Absolution. I don't remember exactly what they did, but so maybe the following does also describe Absolution. In that case, obviously, some credit goes to that. But in this one, okay, just in case, I gotta briefly explain. So in the first one, you point to something you can interact with, and then you right-click. And then you scroll through the options, and that can at times get annoying because, like, if you took out an armed enemy, then the options, there's a cancel, obviously, in case you change your mind about. But other than that, there is drag body, take disguise, and take weapon. Oh, and right, I think sometimes also you can take items from the dead bodies, like maybe a key or something. I'm sorry, that's kind of a lot. And here, yeah, I already mentioned, a gun, and if they are carrying, let's say, a key card, yeah, that drops on the ground, and basically, yeah, on PC it's I think it's default F, or maybe I changed it, but yeah, and it'll just say, if you press F, you'll pick up this thing. And there are times where the pointing is a little bit awkward, and sometimes the same key will do multiple things there. And I suppose I wouldn't have hated if maybe it would just say, okay, how about you hold down F and then you scroll to the thing you want to pick up, because, there's only going to be so many of those comparatively to, yeah. But for example, dragging, taking disguise, and picking things up, 3 different keys. I also really appreciate that so LMB is for shooting, using a ranged attack. Q is for short range attack, so you cannot accidentally do one while trying to do the other. That was also a thing. I think it was because I, took out so many NPCs, but there were times where it was like lagging a little bit on actually short range attacking. Now, I think that might cover the control scheme. I do really appreciate that there are not that many keys you have to keep track of, and yet there's just enough. I really, really appreciate that they made one that is just called place. So, for example, I mentioned, there's something called I forget if I named it, but it's called a breaching charge. If you want to blow open a door, that's the ideal way to do it. If you throw it, it might be a little awkward because there is some bounce, and if it's too far away, that's also something I hope they fix in 2 or 3. I hope that they do bring back the breach charge, but I hope that they make it so that it's a little bit more dependable, because like it's not a huge problem when you're manually saving, but if you're playing a challenge, you have 2 breaching charges. If you use both and they don't blow a hole, you just have to restart, and that's frustrating because sometimes I swear they were within range. But yeah, place, basically you press that key and there's this little like it's green if you can place it there, and then you just press E and you place it. It's red if you can't place it there. And yeah, you can put it you can put it on a wall if it's something that sticks. You can put it anywhere on the ground. It is much more dependable than simply the drop function. And yeah, I also thought they did a fantastic job with like the various explosives. So you still have, I think Blood Money was the one that introduced the idea of, here is a remote controlled explosive, and if you upgrade in that one, you can have 2. In this one, like hypothetically, you could bring 3 separate ones into a level through, I already explained how. And in addition to ones that are triggered by a remote. And some of those are also, it's not a spoiler, I swear, but I have to mention, one of them looks like a cell phone, a smartphone specifically. If you place that on the ground, let's see, I forget if it's, I think the first time you trigger it, it rings. And, maybe someone might be like, oh, hey, maybe I can help that person. That's not my phone, but maybe I can be like, oh, hey, can you describe the person whose phone this belongs to? Because now I know that they wouldn't be able to call the cops if I mug them. No, I can return the phone to them, or maybe I can do something for you both, kind of thing. So they'll pick up the phone. Oh, actually, come to think of it, I think it is when they answer the phone, it blows up. You don't even, so you just, you trigger it, and you just walk away. And if no one saw you place it, drop it, or throw it, nobody knows, because it's just like, what the fuck just happened? A phone blew up. Why does that concern the bald-headed man with the barcode tattoo on the back of his head, wearing a suit in a location that doesn't really necessarily call for that? And that does also, I appreciate, sorry about that. Did not mean to make the camera bounce. I think it's important, before I say the following, to note, you are not forced to use the following at all. Never in this game are you forced to do the following. It is like, that is one of the relatively few praises I do make of the third Thief game, Deadly Shadows, I think it's called. Because that one introduces the third-person angle, and I'm like, no, Garrett does not. I'm pretty sure Garrett only moves in first person. That's just how it is. You never have to use the third person in that game. Not at any point. I have played it through multiple times. I am aware that third-person option is an option. I have never used it, and the game has never forced me to. There is no place in the game where you have to use that. I guess I'll just very briefly explain why. It feels like a cheat to me because it allows you to peek around corners without yourself risking being seen. And I'm sorry, that's a big part of Thief to me, is if you peek around a corner, you might be seen. That fucker does not have a mini-map telling you where enemies are. I also do appreciate in the mini-map of this one, unlike something like, I want to say, doesn't Splinter Cell Blacklist do this? In this one, there is no vision cone. You can see where they are. You also can't see if they're guards. That's in contracts. You can see let's see, I think it distinguishes, this one just distinguishes between target and not target. In contracts, I believe cops are marked as blue. And then target, I think there's also civilian and guard, and yeah, they decided to change that for here. And again, I mean, ultimately, it is, part of it is that there's so much more leeway here already, so it's, right, okay. Now I have several things I got to, okay, so one of the things that you have here that you don't have to use is that you can start a level wearing something other than the signature suit. Right, also, when you pick a starting location, some of them are undercover, so you start in disguise, which is, of course, you cannot use that if you're trying to do a suit-only silent assassin thing, a challenge. But I don't have much more to add about challenges, because I already said in my video on Absolution, they actually, because from the very start, there's been some experimentation possible, and we love that. We players fucking love that about these games. And then by Absolution, they were like, well, okay, let's just say, hey, here, try if you can do that, and that's back. I forget how many there were in that one, but I mean, there's probably more, considering this allows you to do more things. But yeah, you can choose other types of suits, including some, there's the white one that's oh shit, I forget if that's part of, so technically I think I do have the goatee or Game of the Year edition. It just didn't play the downloads, although I'm not even entirely certain you can still even get the non-Game of the Year edition. I don't even know. I think there's places where you can't even buy this game without also buying 2 and or 3 or something. But anyway, the yeah, you're never forced to, but you can start wearing that. You can also start wearing the clown outfit, which, yeah, I liked wearing that in the 4th game, so it was fun enough to wear this. It did feel, it is one of those cases where, at least not on, if you're not playing on professional, they're not necessarily going to comment on it, which did feel a little weird, walking around this clown in a place where a clown there's no clowning business going on here. But other than that, another thing is instinct mode, and I think that really helps open this game up to people who were intimidated by some of the others, and I don't blame them. Like when I played the first one, if I played the first one for the first time today, I wouldn't get all the way through it. I would not get very far before I was just like, you know what, no, there's other games. But that was of the time. I mean, that was also, the original version. Yeah, the first Hitman did not have saving during levels, and there's at least one that might take you 40 fucking minutes to play through. Once you know exactly what to do, it might take you even longer the first time. It might take you over an hour the first time. But the original AVP, the 99 one, right? I gotta specify, because I understand there's maybe like arcade games that precede that are also called AVP. But anyway, the 1999's Alien vs. Predator, the original version did not let you save partway through a level. If you get killed 2 seconds before completing a level, fuck you. Try again, And that's a game where you only unlock all the bonus levels if you complete every single level, or every single regular level, on the highest difficulty setting. And that was just how games were back then. And you either went with it or you found, something easier to play. I mean, that we did also have casual games back then. I don't think The Sims were super difficult back then. Have they ever gotten difficult? Those are cozy games, aren't they? I think I rarely play cozy games. So anyway, including Sims. Anyway, the let's see. Yeah, instinct mode in this essentially lets you look right. You only really need to use it if you're making a contract, because that's how you mark targets. And you can unmark, and you can mark someone after you've already taken them out. You can mark up to 5 targets, and you can specify whether in order to complete the contract, you have to take them out in a specific amount of time, wearing a specific disguise, using a specific type of attack, all these kinds of things, which, yeah, the possibilities are practically endless. It's kind of ridiculous how open the contracts thing is, and also just, all the things you can do in the regular levels, but the contract specifically you can share, And I think that might cover, let's see, yeah. So instinct. Basically, it enables you to see through the most nearby walls, and it highlights the targets in red, meaning you can see where they are, and you can see them moving a little bit, so you can see what direction they're headed towards, and plan accordingly. They do also, the targets are the only characters other than yourself that appear on the regular map. The mini map shows everyone. And yeah, there are, no, it's not a spoiler to say, one place where you might want to use it is in some of the sniper situations. Did I mention every single level viable for sniping? All of them. All the regular ones. I think, let's see, at least one of the training ones doesn't really lend itself towards it, but all the regular ones. And the training levels, there's so much you can't do in those anyway. So, but yeah, it's just about finding the right spot and the right place. As mentioned, your targets move around. So, yeah. And it's so satisfying finding the exact right angle and location. There's one where you can snipe and then leave the level within seconds, and it's so freaking cool. It feels so like you feel like a master assassin, which is the title of one of the challenges. Let's see. I did also appreciate, I do think there's some fun in the fact that some of the challenges do not have a description. They just have a name, and then it says redacted. And based on the name and the picture, you have to experiment until you find out what it is. And I've seen several people say, well, I experimented, or somebody else told me and they experimented. That's how you find out, and that's, again, one of the ways, like, you really don't want to risk ending up feeling like the game is, that you're spending too much time on the game, or it's taking you too long, that sort of thing, because there's so much joy to be had here that you don't want to end up killing with the, as Gianmarco Soresi, who I'm not saying everything about him is fucking amazing, but he is really funny, and he points out, comparison is the thief of joy, and the so not quite killer. Anyway, I think I have to stop saying thief because it will remind me that there is a VR thief game, and I don't currently play VR, and I don't know if I ever will, and oh my god, that's such a perfect game to do in VR. Moving on. I'm kidding, I'm not actually that upset. Anyway, the sniping. Sometimes the perfect time to snipe is when they move past a window, and if you're not using instinct to see how close they are to passing the window, that can be a real, but you never actually have to snipe. If you want to do everything other than snipe in this game, you can. You are never, ever just forced to. And, yeah, I think it might actually be... No, I think Blood Money you could also avoid sniping if you really badly wanted to. That one was just open enough that you could, but other than that, if one of these games want you snipe, well, maybe Contracts, actually, that one does also have certain openness, but certainly 1 and 2, like if you're not sniping anyone, it can be really, really difficult to get all the way through. Now, I think that does pretty much... I don't know if it's, is that a spoiler? I'll just say there was a thing about Sniper Rifle that I was a little bit surprised about here, but ultimately I think it was an interesting decision, and this is a game where they take away some things that you had in earlier Hitman games, and it makes up for it in other ways. It doesn't feel like, oh, we're just having less opportunities, the way that Absolution, takes away way too much. It's way too linear. And especially coming off fucking Blood Money has so much less linearity, and then with this one, even less, because of starting location, starting equipment, and all this stuff, you know. Oh, did I mention, so the code, if you don't have a key card, you know, maybe if you work really hard, you might be able to unlock something called a manual bypass. But if you do, you can only bring one set. I don't think, I certainly wasn't able to, I don't think you can find any additional ones. And the one set comes with 3. If there's more than 3 locked doors, and to note that is important, once you unlock a door with that, it remains unlocked for the rest of that play, the rest of that run. But if there's more than 3 doors, that's it, you know. And I believe there's nowhere in the game where you can end up just straight up locked out completely. But if you're not careful, you might end up in an area where it's like, oh, I cannot go back through the door that was opened by someone else behind and now closed behind me. And there are people with guns in front of me, and they don't like that I'm here. I think that does pretty much... Yeah, I thought they did a good job on the enemy. So, you know, basically, if it's a guard, they probably have some kind of gun, but I thought they did a good job of, yeah, some of them do just have a pistol, and they can still be dangerous if you're caught, if you're really careless, and you know, or if there's enough of them, which, like, maybe near where, you know, I already mentioned, you know, if they find a weapon, they'll put it near a bunch of guards, and maybe you're like, I need that fucking weapon because there's a challenge I need to do. At that point, you may just want to, like, load or restart or something, but yeah, hypothetically, you could try to, yeah. And that's also where you delete evidence a lot of the time. And that is also a thing that, you know, it's not the first game to do that, but every single level has at least one camera and at least one place where you can destroy. If you're spotted by the camera, you can destroy the the thing, and you can shoot the camera before. If you simply cannot get to where the camera the video is stored, you can shoot the camera before it films you. And there's actually a very specific gun which you do have to unlock, which is incredibly silent and really good for shooting, because who knows, maybe there's people near that camera and you can't get them to move without being seen by the camera. Now, I think that does... But yeah, you know, other than that, there are guards with more heavy weaponry than, you know, I guess I already mentioned that, but yeah. And they do use careful tactics, except for when the AI fucks up every so often, especially when there's a lot happening, you know. But yeah. And something that I will admit took me a little bit of getting used to, they can sometimes shoot through things where it's like, well, yeah, shit. I mean, I guess in real life, that kind of gun would be able to shoot through that. I'm just kind of used to games being like, no, they can't shoot through that. And yeah, they will shoot even if they can't see exactly where you are, because it's like, well, they heard a gunshot. They didn't see, you know, that, like, I don't know, maybe they can also, like, hear just enough of footsteps. So yeah, they'll shoot through a wall or something. And, you know, I believe you can as well. But if there's multiple of them, you know, yeah. I think that might just about... The ending is appropriately super fucking cool. And yeah, every level has you feeling really, really awesome when you get it exactly right, which I'm willing to acknowledge. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not making excuses for... I do think that level in the very first one where you're just getting past... I can never remember. Is it a panther, maybe? You know, and it's like, okay, you got to time it exactly right. The panther has to be in a very specific spot, and then you can get past it. Otherwise, you have to shoot it and then be fired upon, or it'll kill you. And it's like, why is this here? What is this? Like, it feels like filler, and I'm not making excuses for it. I love so much about that game, but not that. It's also just so nice. I appreciate this is not the first to have that, but the ability to crouch. I forget when they added it, but this does in fact have wall hugging, and you can, you know, if you hug a wall at a corner and you aim the gun, you can like stick your head and gun out right around the corner, shoot, and then back into the. And this one also enables. Again, I'm not saying it was necessarily the first to do it. I'm just saying what's in this game. This one, if you are wall hugging and the enemy does not spot you, if he comes close enough, you can grab him. I think you can with fiber wire. You certainly can without, like, just unhanded, you fools. And if you do that, he will, 47 will grab the guy and drag him behind the cover that he is covering behind. That also feels much like, I suppose not only Assassin's Creed, there's something very similar in some of the Splinter Cell games, certainly. I forget if it's all of them. So, but yeah, it really works. And I'm so glad that it didn't, like, there's genuinely not a single thing in this game that's just like, oh, I guess I'll just be doing that forever. Like, no matter what, if you don't want to be doing it, there's some other option. Like, you don't even have to, like, hypothetically, let's say that you play some levels and you're like, oh, it's fun to poison or fiber wire or drown or blow up or shoot or push off a tall area or make them do something extremely specific that ends up getting them killed in some way. Like, no matter how you wish to take out your target, there's, you might not be able to do it with every target, but there's at least one target in this game that you can do that with, one of the ones I've just mentioned. And even if you are like, well, let's just go with short range or, like melee. Well, do you want to bash their head in with a blunt object? Do you want to throw a knife in their goddamn face? Like, this game does allow for it in one way or another, And I think that does the AI, the patrol paths, sightlines, and such are very carefully, set up so that there are a number of places where, yeah, it's like, wait, can I fucking do that? And then you save and you try perhaps more than once, perhaps more than one thing, and you end up like, holy shit, the game let me do that. Like, there was actually one of the ones I remember the best is actually the first non-training level. Like, I was like, well, I mean, there's a challenge that says I'm supposed to be able to do this, so I guess I'll try. Holy shit, that fucking worked. And it's so unbelievably fucking cool. And of course you get, it's well, let's see, I guess it's that they detract points if you don't. But yeah, you can hide bodies, both dead and unconscious. You can hide yourself, and this, like Absolution, and that again is something I do appreciate. I do think that is a little awkward in Blood Money, how there are a bunch of various kinds of, that's also they're in Absolution. In this, they got so fucking good at making them feel organic. Like, there are closets that are big enough, for example. There are freezers and various, but yeah, in Blood Money, there's one kind to store bodies and one kind to hide yourself. And it did feel a little awkward, like, wait, why can't I hide in the one where I store a body? And in Absolution, that was added, and that is still the case here. And you can even take someone's disguise after you've already hidden them. So if you only have time to hide them, just wait until you're no longer being looked at and then change the disguise. And I guess that does pretty much, I think that is more or less everything. Yeah, I don't know, maybe I've already made it pretty clear, but yeah, this game is almost never ever linear. You don't even have to choose, or you're not even kept from choosing what order to take out. You know, as mentioned, there's, other than the training missions, there's always at least 2 targets. Which order you want to do them in, it's up to you. You know, if you can find a way to, and they even, in one of them, if you take out one of the 2 targets and you make it look like an accident, which is also, there's never been this many ways. Like, you can make gas heat lamps explode. That's not a spoiler. You can find that out by looking at the challenges, you know. And it's the first time you can do it is really, really early in this game, you know. But yeah, and anyway, the if you make it look like an accident, if you take out one target, the other target will be informed and will react to the fact that it appears to have been an accident. Like, they actually did dialogue for that. You know, I have to admit, the first time I, you know, right before I experienced that, I was like, oh shit, they're telling them, of course they're going to tell them. And yeah, hearing that is like, well, you know, I won't give away their exact reaction, but it didn't lead to a target lockdown is my point. And yeah. Right, every single level has at least one specific disguise that has at least, you know what, I don't, let's see, at least one very specific challenge tied to that one. And some, I think, I guess they are always split off into a different, there's different categories of challenges in this game, you know. And yeah, it's so fucking cool, because like, part of it is that the disguise you're taking, I don't know if I want to give away if it's always the case, but on a non-zero is like bad, right? From what I understand, it means it shouldn't happen even once. At least once in this game, putting on that disguise makes everywhere restricted or possibly even fucking hostile. So not only do you have to do this thing that's already difficult, if you're spotted, they're not going to ask you politely to leave, at least not with their mouths, but possibly with their goddamn bullets. And I think that does pretty much cover that element. I will say the inventory, so there's a lot to love. I do appreciate that there is a there are things that you technically have that don't pop up in the inventory. Or wait, shit. Am I thinking of? Wait. Oh, now I remember. Yeah. So in some of the earlier ones, you know, for example, in the first one, if you pick up the same type of gun from 2 different people, from what I recall at least, that means that you have both of those guns in your inventory. And I wouldn't necessarily say it was a problem in that one, but I do appreciate in this one, because there's so much other in the inventory, I can never remember. So I really appreciate that they did make it so that, no, it's just the one, you know, it only appears as one in the inventory, and you can only have that one. And in fact, you know, if you pick up 2 real close to each other, that might be, you know, potential extra ammo that you wasted. But on the other hand, if you just leave it there, it might get put in the guard area. So, you know, you have to make that choice. But I do think that, and I appreciate, so the following is not going to be equally relevant for everyone, but I am one of those people who, if I see something in a video game that I think might be useful, I pick it up. And there are levels in this where you can end up with like half a dozen fucking different, you know, melee, you know, melee weapons / or non-gun weapons that can also double as distractions. I don't think they needed to have you scroll through all of them. And I do appreciate, so I didn't realize this immediately, but I think, I forget if it's left or right, but I think the guns will show up. Oh, let's see. Is it maybe if you go left, you immediately get to your guns? And again, you know, you can. I don't think I ever carried more than maybe 3 or 4, something like that, in any one level. So you very quickly scroll through those. And then if you go right, it pretty quickly gets to the throwable, distractible ones. I still do think I wish there was a tiny bit less streamlining there. I think because the thing is, like in some shooters, if you press like 1, 2, 3, etc., possibly etc., it will that's how you select guns. I think considering how few guns, or no, hypothetical, let's just go with 1 could be for cycling through pistols, 2 could be for submachine gun, and 3 is for whatever heavy weapon you have, whether it is a firearm or something else, because again, you can only, I don't think you can even have one like on your back and then another in your hands. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, even if you could, that would still work well for cycling, and then have 1 for cycling through non-lethal, melee slash throwable slash distracting item, and then 1 for lethal throwable distracting sort of thing, because I did find myself scrolling through, I do appreciate that at least if you pick up a bunch of the same one, they won't appear separately. It will just, like if you have, let's say, 3 soda cans, they don't have 3 separate ones. And let's not pretend like that was never the case, because I'm not saying that was always bad, but it would have been so frustrating here. But, like hypothetically, I fucking love System Shock 2. I own the remaster and the remake of the first one, and I will definitely do them. It's not going to be immediately, but I cannot fucking wait. The other night I had a goddamn dream about it. Oh my god, I need to focus, because otherwise I'm just going to go off. I have made so many fucking videos talking about how much I fucking love System Shock 2, so I'm not going to make this another one. Anyway, in System Shock 2, if you pick up, say, 2 soda cans, they will appear 2 different spots, and that's also in part because, they function as weak healing items in that, so yeah, you want to, how many of those you want to carry with your limited inventory? This one does not have any limits to the inventory space. You can be carry. I guess I already made that clear, but yeah, I think it would have been good if they did that. I suppose an argument could be made that there are sometimes fetch quests. Sometimes you will, in order to accomplish certain things, you will have to find something that you have to work to get access to, that sort of thing. I don't think they ever took over, because that's, fetch quest doesn't have to be a dirty word. It's 2 words, Larry. But if it is all the game offers, then yeah, it's like, okay, this is, I made my case for why I really loved a lot about Paper Cut Mansion, but I am willing to acknowledge there are a lot of fetch quests in that one. But yeah, here, and also just the fact that they always make sense and feel satisfying. Like, I was never like, wait, I'm sorry, why the fuck am I having to look for this really basic thing? Like I mentioned, for example, coin soda cans, that sort of thing. You want a soda can? It's probably a place where people are drinking. Go there, You want coins? I don't know, is there a fountain nearby that maybe people wished at? That sort of thing. And yeah, so it feels like you're working towards, like, there is such a sense of satisfaction of achievement in this game. That's something, that's one of the reasons I love this franchise. These games are so fucking good at that, and that's where, like, I'm sorry, that's part of why I stopped playing Assassin's Creed. There's so much of the time in Assassin's Creed, like, if you fuck up, like, whatever. Like, I mentioned this in at least one of my videos. There were times where I was like, oh, well, if these guards kill me, I'll just go back to really close by. I don't really feel like fighting them. Just, I'll let them kill me. And sometimes that took really long, because they make some of these games so fucking easy. And that's where I really appreciate. I think this is such a fucking perfect, spot on, pitch perfect, exact balance. This game is never too easy. And if you don't want it to be too difficult, make choices to not make it difficult. Like, you don't have to go for the challenges. You can look at your opportunities. If, like, hypothetical, let's say that you want to, maybe the primary thing is you want to see what the various levels look like, or just, you want to see you want to take out each target once, you want to see the cutscenes, that sort of thing, that's fine. Find, the opportunity is not necessarily going to be super obvious, but there's not so many that it's not. I never felt like an opportunity was a waste of my time or anything. But yeah, there's an appropriate opportunity to get really close to, at least several of the targets throughout this game. Eventually you may have to, work harder, but like as long as you're fine with like hanging back and observing, yeah, you'll be fine. You will be able to get through this, even if like I don't know that I would necessarily make this the first stealth game you ever play. You should probably have at least a little practice from others, though I appreciate, a bunch of the time it's social stealth, not line of sight stealth. So, but yeah, if you are down for reconnaissance and careful planning, this game delivers that, and I found it rewarding personally to go super deep into that. But some people are just going to want the very straightforward stuff, like some of the earliest levels of the first one, for example, like that first level of the first one, like, yeah, I mean, okay, so there's someone in a park that I have to take out. There's a tall building nearby with an elevator, and I'm allowed to bring a sniper rifle into the level. Okay, I guess I can probably figure this out. I mean, that's almost an extension of the tutorial. It's like, okay, so this is how it's, but yeah, I think I have made my point. The various levels have a clear atmosphere. I always felt like, okay, this is an actual place. This is, I could go here in the real world, and this is how it would be. The way that, like, because there tends to be chatter among NPCs and such, but it is very different depending on the social environment. And I think I believe all the cutscenes are skippable if you wish, and there's a briefing video for each level, which always, you get a sense of, okay, so it's this kind of place, and you see what the targets look like. You get some background information that can come in really handy, and then, after each level, there's also a cutscene which relates to the main plot. And let's see. Yeah, so the graphics, huge upgrade. Like, that's something I've said before, I don't think that's the most important thing about video games. Like, there's so many other places if you just want to look at something that looks really good. I mean, I feel like, if that's the main thing, DeviantArt, look up, impressive, artwork, creative expression there, but I do appreciate about IO Interactive, none of their games look bad. They like to push the envelope. Sometimes they push it a little bit too hard and end up, with something that doesn't completely work. But yeah, this is definitely the most impressive. Like, as soon as I started playing it, I was like, holy shit, this looks fucking amazing, And yeah, they found a really great balance between a high level of detail and also making it that, as mentioned, I had almost no problems with lag whatsoever, despite these large levels with all these subplots. Like, they really, it's that thing of how, they've done this since the start of the Hitman games. The most, like, let's see, I think is maybe the render distance or something. The thing the player is looking at is what's being rendered when, and this is gonna, I know some people, you can look this up. I swear I'm not making this up, but before this, and I guess maybe probably still some games, they will render the entire level, even the parts you can't see right away. And that, of course, if you want a large level, that's gonna kind of fucking limit how much detail you can include if it all has to be rendered consistently, even as you're running around and engaging in action-heavy gameplay and all this stuff, But yeah, it really, I mean, it's one of the things that make this game even possible. Like, this is a game that genuinely could not have been made just like a few years earlier. Like, I mean, I'm not saying Splinter Cell Blacklist was trying to be this, but you know, that one has to separate. You know, that it's very linear. I do still love that game. You know, I'm not sure I'm gonna replay it because these days I don't replay games that much, but you know, in that one, very, very linear. And as soon as you've completed one area, you cannot go back to that area. Where in this, I mean, yeah, you can spend an hour just walking around everywhere in a level and maybe, you know, yeah, doing various things like drugging, knocking people out, shooting, and you can go back to the first area where you took out the first person and they're still there. That person is still lying where you left them. And it just does make it feel more like a real thing, you know. And yeah, I really, really love that. So I'm obviously not taking credit, but years ago I did mention, you know, I think it would be cool before this game came out. I want to know, you know, you can check, you can go find the video, you know, let's see, pitch idea, Hitman, something. But yeah, I did say, you know, maybe it would be cool if there was more reconnaissance. Back then, I thought, you know, maybe there should be a level where you can't actually harm them, where you can only observe. I do think this is better. I'm not going to pretend like I know what the fuck I was thinking saying that, because obviously this is the better way. But yeah, that's the thing. In this level, in this game, unlike, well, let's see. I guess the first to really, no, you know what? They've perfected it. That's what I want to say. In at least, I guess each of the others has at least one level each where you can, you know, but you can spend so much time just observing and just figuring out, you know, it's that, and that's one of the reasons. Like, I get that it's difficult to make non-linear stealth. That's one of the reasons I fucking love the Hitman games that are able to do it, the Thief games that are able to do it. You know, I mean, Splinter Cell, I don't know if they were ever really trying to. That is one thing. If they make another one, I do think it would be super fucking cool if they managed to make a somewhat sandbox. It doesn't have to be as big as this, you know, but just something where, like, okay, so in the middle of the level, there is this building, and that's where the enemies are. You can, like, take out the guards outside, or you can find a way to sneak in, like this, like Deus Ex 1, you know, that sort of thing. But yeah, the and right, and Thief, obviously, some of the Thief games. But the yeah, you can spend a while just getting the lay of the land, just figuring out, you know, where are they moving. I do think that is, I'm not saying every stealth game can do it, but I think it is an admirable goal to try to make it that it's not always someone you have to kill. In Thief, you might have to kidnap them or something, or just confront them or something. But having them move around and having there be very specific places where you definitely don't want to, you know, be when they get there, you know, that's such a fucking cool thing to do. But yeah, the let's see. The thing, ah, yeah, you know, you can just go around just taking in the level, and you're not being shot at. You're not being, you know, you can even go to a bunch of the secret areas. You know, you might have to knock someone out or get a little creative to get there, but you don't really have to start killing until you decide to do so. And that's, again, part of where it really makes you feel like 47, like you choose the terms, you know. And the sound design, so I've talked perhaps excessively at length about the various voice, you know, yeah, I already mentioned, you know, I mentioned 47's, but all of them do fantastic voice acting. There, I mean, there is some where it like feels over the top, but that's another part of just Danish, you know, sensibility, sense of humor. Like, if you watch one of our older, you know, we used to do comedies that were just ridiculous. Like, I think we do straight up call them farces, and I think that is a very appropriate way to, you know, just, yeah, really, really slapsticky. Sometimes good verbal comedy as well, but much broader than, like, if you compare a 60s comedy, an American one to a Danish one, sometimes it's fucking night and day. Like some of our 60s comedies feel like fucking Three Stooges and, like stuff that was older. Yeah, I don't know. It appealed to audiences. Thankfully, we did also make some that are more mature, like the Olsen Gang, for example, has a lot more maturity. A lot of them, most of them, almost all of them. Anyway, yeah. Other than that, the sound design, the weapons, every act of violence sounds, there's like a weight behind it. And I also thought they did great on the distractions, because like obviously in universe it's supposed to make noise, because otherwise how is it distracting? Did I mention, if you are spotted throwing something, they're not going to be distracted by it. They're just going to be like, stop doing that, you fucking weirdo. But yeah, so it's obviously important that it makes noise. Hypothetically, they could have just been like, no, you just have to imagine the noise, because there are things in this game where you kind of have to give them some leeway. But no, they make it make noise. And there is at least some degree of, like, certain things make more noise. I wouldn't say it's quite to the level of something like Thief, where, if you throw a heavy item onto, like, say, marble, it's going to make significantly more noise. And if you throw a heavy item onto, like, grass, it might make zero noise. But yeah, there is, let's see, and I think the, did I already mention, like, the sheer number of NPCs and, armed, personnel protecting targets, or just the area in general? Yeah, you genuinely can't really just run and gun, but it is possible. Oh shit, I think I already said that. But yeah, and they do a really great job. One of the things is also that if you try that, if that's your opening move, you are fucked. But you might have a better chance if you spend a little bit of time getting an idea of how the level works out. And as you go through it, yeah, you might be like, oh, this would be a good place to lure, or to start, shooting enemies, because maybe the angle is more beneficial to you than to them. That sort of thing, so yeah. The music, they have never missed. That is something that has been completely consistent across all Hitman games, up to and including this one. Fantastic fucking music. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's cool and epic when you get something exactly right. It's very tense when that's what's called for. And there's some that's just like atmosphere. And I think I have covered the most of the rest of this stuff. I think they also find a really great balance. That's, again, super difficult, but the level design, there's a balance between it feeling like a real place and it allowing for all this freedom of movement and emergent gameplay and such. Like, because if you want a bunch of different entrances to one building, you may have to get a little creative for it to not feel, out of place. And yeah. And I never felt led by the nose. Like, the opportunities obviously have that, but those are optional. It never felt like in this game they were just telling me, okay, you have to do this. You don't even have to look at the challenges. If what I've said about the challenges puts you off, don't play them. Nobody's going to force you. Sorry, don't even look at them. Same thing for opportunities. You can just go into the game and just, like, yeah, try out different things until you find something that works, or maybe, get a lay of the land, deduce, lay a plan, carry out that plan. The game will let you, and you will be rewarded for that. The less mess, the less chaos, the more you'll be rewarded, or the less you'll be penalized, perhaps. But yeah, and I think that is, yeah, great variety in countries and parts of the world that you visit. in the specific like places. Like some of these, like hypothetically, some of these levels, you could have had more than one in the same country, for example, but they wanted to explore different ones. And yeah, I mean, I have visited some of the countries myself that appear in this game, and it really was just like being there. So yeah, really, really cool. I can't speak to all of them, but some of them certainly. And I think I think that might cover absolutely everything. So yeah, I hope I have made clear what the game is like, and for many have made a strong case, in case anybody else has waited this fucking long to get to, well, waited, has not been able to play this for this fucking long. But yeah, it's going to be a while before I get to the second and third. Like I mentioned, it took me a year to get through this one. I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to take with the next one, because I am playing more times during the day. Still not more than 11 minutes in a row, but or rarely at least. But but yeah, I'm gonna do one that is not Hitman. I think I know which one, but I don't want to jinx it, so I won't say it. And then I'm gonna do, at least the plan is, I'll do Hitman 2 after that, of the really long ones that are in series. But yeah, it could be a while before I do Hitman 2. When I do Hitman 2, and again when I do 3, I will try to talk about whether I think you should jump directly to those, because I do appreciate, if I understand correctly, and please look this up, but I think there is something about that you can play the levels of this one in 2 and or 3, and then obviously there are certain things that are different in those, and yeah, I think that is a really cool way to do this. Like, hypothetically, you could go directly to, playing one of the later ones, and you could play the same levels but in the new engine, so that you're still getting, yeah, I did consider doing that, but I really don't want there to be an IO Interactive game that I just don't play at all. And yeah. Okay, I'm real quick gonna mentally go over. I promise it will be super brief. If there's anything at all left that I wanted to make absolutely certain to say. Let's see. So no, I think that might... I really appreciate it. I'm not sure, it might not be every single level, but several of the levels will introduce at least one new element that had not been in the ones before it. Each level will keep you on your toes. There is always something that you have to, yeah. And I also just really appreciate how, like, by this point, it does not feel like the game is trying to lure you into a trap. Like, I love a lot about that first game, and I don't necessarily think it was wrong for that game, because they did need to do something to make it longer, but there are definitely times in the first game, and I'm not saying that you have to be okay with that. I understand being frustrated by it, especially if you're playing it for the first time these days, but there are places in that first game where they will essentially lure you to do something that's going to fuck up your run. And as mentioned, you can't save in that one, so you have to start the level over. You might have spent an hour on it and then find something and be like, oh, I'm supposed to do this, and immediately fail. And that doesn't happen in, certainly not in the regular levels. I wouldn't rule out, obviously I haven't played all the challenges. I doubt there's anyone who has. It's contracts, not challenges, sorry. But there's also something called escalation contracts, where apparently it's like, I think up to 5 different stages of one, and yeah, you'll complete one of the stages, and then it'll let you know what the next one is, and then you have to complete that one. And I wasn't entirely sure. I saw conflicting reports on whether or not you could accidentally fuck it up and have to start all over because you did something that you hadn't been told to do or not to do. That is the question. In the, all the way back in the first stage, you might, by the 5th one, realize, oh, me doing that actually fucked it over. Like maybe you knock someone out and then hide their body, and you were supposed to kill them, because you cannot do, once someone is knocked out and placed in some kind of container, that's it. Or maybe you killed someone that was not supposed to die, or at least not until they had done something later in the level, that sort of thing. Those are entirely optional. I attempted one, fucked up soon, and I was like, you know what? I think I'll just stick to the story ones. And yeah, they're there if you want more. I did not. But yeah, the main levels, it never really lures you into it. Like, you can usually get some idea of, you apply common sense, obviously. Like, I've already mentioned, if you fire a gun and it's, like, there are, of course, some silenced weapons, but if people realize you have a gun and you are using it, or if you have a gun and you're not supposed to, yes, that might be, yeah, they can, you could get attacked, because, Second Amendment in some situations does not apply. And I'm in favor of gun control, so I'm not saying, I think there are some people who I understand why they might want to have guns, because there are people trying to kill them for their minority identity. And I hope they never have to use the gun, but I understand having it as a deterrent. But I did notice that not terribly long ago, suddenly some Republicans were talking about, like, oh, you can't have a gun because of circumstance that I think you probably already know what I'm talking about. And yeah, just I don't know, something to notice and maybe keep in mind next time there's an election. That's all I'm saying. Obviously, I'm not encouraging violence. This is not hate speech or any Fed posting or anything like that. Yeah. Holy shit. I feel very satisfied to have beaten the game. I loved most of the time I spent on it, and the time I didn't was in part my own fault. And yeah, I genuinely did not think there was any fucking way that this could completely live up to expectations, but it managed to exceed them. It was so much better than yeah. Anyway, I hope you too feel that this was thorough. Not the Henry David one. And yeah, I rate this. It's not quite a perfect score. I want to underline, basically, it is just the couple of things where it's a little bit, I've mentioned some bugs or glitches, which each on their own, not a huge deal. They do add up a little bit. That's basically it. I do want to really underline my rating. I am not saying that I think there needed to be more content here. I don't know, maybe I've made that clear by now. I don't think there needed to be more challenges, less of a push to do challenges, escalation contracts in general, etc. And yeah, it really is just, it's these It's the bugs, glitches, maybe also a little bit of the material that is offensive to minorities. That is what it is. It's also important for me to note, it is not that I thought this should have been more like action-y, you know. Again, like, yeah, I guess I did say that right at the top. If you really want a Hitman game where you can just shoot fucking everyone and be able to get away with it, you know, yeah, like contracts, I forget if it's every single level, and certainly I think maybe sometimes you would have to take out the target before you start shooting, but you could just shoot everyone after that if that is really what you feel like. And in this one, that is less the case, you know, and that isn't really what they're going for. And I don't recall any marketing that led me to believe that it would be. And you know, at the end of the day, like, one of the main goals of the Hitman games is this more like puzzle kind of thing, and you choose when and how, and you know, and that they really fucking nailed. Like, I am genuinely in awe. I was not sure that they would ever be able to top Blood Money for me. Like, you can go back and watch my video on that. I still love that game. And if I still replayed games, I would probably... Honestly, there's not really one that I wouldn't replay at all, though Absolution I might rush through. But if I still replayed... If I was going to choose just one game, I think it might be this one. And I'm not even saying just one Hitman game. I think this might... Like, this is up there with, like, Just Cause 3, System Shock 2, Deus Ex 1, Prince of Persia: The Two Towers... Yes, The Two Towers. No, The Two Thrones, sorry. Two Towers is Lord of the Rings. You know, yeah, among my absolute favorite fucking games. Like, the kind that I just... Yeah, there are countless games that if they... Yeah, if it was even remotely as... you know, because like I mentioned, there were times where I got tired of... Right, did I mention there was one time where there was some kind of AI bug where, like, a guy said he was going to escort me out, and I followed him, and I walked to the spot. Like, if I recall correctly, the spot was marked on the minimap, and then he was still like, okay, you know, and yeah, he was mad at me and started shooting, and I would have been more or less okay, but it was a fucking contract, so I had to... I think... Did I end up... No, yeah, that was back when I was still insistent on completing all of those. I did eventually decide, like, you know what, if it's just too much hassle, I don't need, you know, other people have done it, and I'll just say at the start of the review that I did not complete all of those. Yeah. Yeah. Right. If you... I guess I already mentioned the ranking in the Google Doc, so it's not necessary for me to say here. But the rating, I give this 9 perfectly executed, brilliantly conceived, not by myself, but by the developers, individual targets taken out in ways that maybe look like accidents or maybe aren't discovered because you're able to hide the body and exit the level with no one realizing that anything's amiss. Out of 10.